and also the autonomy. Similarly, if we see this digital economy, digital, because of the digital technology or the digital education, we can expect the digital economy. And in this case, we can cite the example of how the digital economy is being created or being generally
and also the
used.
autonomy.
With the, suppose we can
Similarly,
take
if
the
we
example of
see
Amazon or
this
Flipkart,
digital
because of the
economy,
digitalization and entire things,
digital
how
because
the
of the
entire
digital
world
technology
products
or the digital
are also
education, we
available
can expect
through
the digital
digitalization or
economy,
digital
and in
whatever
this
the things, and people
case,
can get the
we can
entire
cite
things.
the example of
Similarly, in
how
case
the
of the
digital economy is being
digitalization of education
created
created
or
or being
being
generally
and also the
used,
autonomy.
with the,
Confined
suppose we can
similarly,
take
if
the
we
example of
see
Amazon or
this
Flipkart,
digital
because of the
economy,
digitalization and
now this
entire
digital
things,
because
how
of
the
our
digital
world
technology or
products
the
state
digital
Odisha,
education
and how we can access to the digitalization of the professor in Harvard or people can get the entire IIM. Similarly, how the digital economy digitalization of education created or being generally
and also the
used.
autonomy. With the,
Confined
suppose we can
similarly
take the
to
example of
any
Amazon or
institute, this
Flipkart,
digital
because of the
economy,
digitalization and
now this
entire
digital
things, how
because
the
of our
digital
world
technology or
products
the
state
digital
Odisha.
also. And I know that many things can be achieved through this. And in this context, I can cite one to last example, that in case of our India, I can cite the 3 points. One point is, we know the education is power. The nations that have knowledge, skill, and education as its really base shall rule the world as a soft power. It shall not be the rule of the sword, but that of the pen. That's why we always salute the United States of America, because they are ruling with the pen or the knowledge, all these things. And in case of India also, quality education bridge between demography dividend and the disaster, and tapping the demography dividend is very much required among the young. We always speak that India is a young country, etc., etc., unless until this youth mass will be tapped properly with the education, quality education, skill education, etc. Instead of it will be the dividend, it will be the disaster to the nations. So that's why there are many things to be said in this aspect, but I think my time is already over. I have taken more time, so I should not speak such much. But only one thing I can speak. I have been working in the field of education in the last 30 years with the help of the two organizations you have already told. But one thing I have been doing very nicely, empowering the underprivileged children of the society through the Kalinga Institute of Social Science keys. Already 60,000 children have been brought to the society mainstream with the help of the quality education, 30,000 pass out and 30,000 in the campus. So we know that how the importance of education in the present age, particularly in the present age, education is very important. And because of this pandemic situation, digitalization has been helping a lot, minimum to connect the entire world or the students community or the contents, but digitalization is not the entire things. It's because many things are lacking if there is no classroom teaching and many other things we all know. So once again, my special thanks to Manish Chabraji and also Asu Agrolaji, and Ma'am also, Kanna Ma'am is present here, and my lovable love Sri Krishna member of parliament is also seen here. So I wish all the best for this webinar conference going on. I am very much happy and thankful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity just to speak a few words. I am very sorry I am little bit by 15 minutes because it has been raining very heavily since yesterday in our place, Bhubaneswar. That's why I am little bit late to join with you. Minimum I am present at my time 10 o'clock. So thank you very much. All the best. And whatever is possible, just I speak from my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha, for those wonderful words and highlighting the core values of this conversation. I'd like to introduce our guest of honor. Equitable development through education vision for educating India through adoption of tech and industry collaboration across rural and urban areas. A guest of honor, Lavu Sri Krishna Devarayalu, member of Lok Sabha, Vice Chairman of Lavu Educational Society and Vignan University, co-member of IIT Council, MHRD. A little bit about our guest. He is the Vice Chairman of Vignan University, a premier university in Andhra Pradesh, and Vice President of Lavu Educational Society. He's also a co-member of the Human Resources Development Standing Committee. Sri Krishna Devarayalu is a first-time member of Parliament who contested the 2019 general elections from the Nara Sora Raupet constituency, presenting the YSR Congress Party. Mr. Krishna Devarayalu is also an educational ideologist, as he hails from a family of having an elite experience of 7 decades into education. Under Lavu Educational Society, established by his father, Dr. Lavu Rataya, in the region of Guntur, Andhra Pradesh, Lavu Educational Society today holds the Vignan group of institutions which run Vignan University and other engineering institutions, pharmacy colleges, junior colleges, and schools across Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Sir, we welcome you to IEF 2021.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor to speak along with eminent educationist like Dr. Achyuta Samantha. And it is a pleasure to speak on Edtech Journal. And I warmly welcome all the members who have joined in to listen to this talk, for taking your time and having and showing interest in the future of education in India. Today's topic is about digitization, how digitization will bring new changes in education sector. Before we get into it, we should understand where we are coming from. India, with respects to the education, we have a long history. We had great works like Vedas and Upanishads, and we had one of the oldest universities in India, either Takshashila or Nalanda, which we know. This is all our history, and we all know about all these things. And it was education was always in Indian culture given a lot of importance. Even after the independence, we have started across the country number of we thrusted a lot of effort into creating a lot of good institutions across the country, like IITs, NITs, in a lot of institutes of eminence. But either before the independence or after the independence, the one changing one factor that always remains true is before the independence, the education was very much available based on either a caste or based on the caste. No, it is not available for all of the people, and whoever wants to pursue it, it was very difficult. Take for example, one of our founding fathers, you can say, B.R. Ambedkar. If you read his story, what all he has to go through to actually pursue his dream. Even with his brains, brilliant brains, he was struggling to actually move forward and get into good colleges and get acceptance into good colleges because of the discrimination that we had. And right after the independence, in the last 65, 70 years, we have opened a lot of institutes across the country, and there are a lot of schools that have opened up. The gross enrollment ratios are going up year on year, decade after decade. We're literally growing at the rate of, at some point of time, we're growing at the rate of almost 50% decade after decade with regards to the gross enrollment ratios. but even now, the quality education is still denied to the people, or not accessible to the people who are downtrodden, whose economic status is.
I think the major challenge, which we need to face is training of the teachers. Through using Coursera, using EDX, our students have been exposed to some of the best teachers, from the world over.
Right.
So because of that, the teachers that we have, this is now responsibility of all higher education leaders, all, whether they are pro-chancellors, chancellors, vice chancellors, to train our faculty members.
Right.
Communication skills, sharing, using both the platforms, whether it's digital or physical classrooms. The focus has to be on learning of students, not
Right.
teaching style. I
Right.
think we need to find out which are the passionate teachers. We need to train them, very aggressively, and
Sure.
ensure that what they've experienced, students have experienced using EDX, Coursera, and those platforms, similar experience, we can create in our classrooms.
Right.
This is one big change which I see, which is going to happen. Another interesting point is, regarding the CBCS kind of system. What I believe, the students are going to have interest in very many areas. Using the free Coursera kind of, programs, every student has experienced courses in his domain, also courses in other domains. And
Right.
what happened because of that, there is now more, I would say, hunger for variety of knowledge. So
Sure.
that time has passed when you were, joining only one program and, learning only in one direction, one domain, that silo kind of knowledge. Now that is a passe now. And I believe, like at ITM, what we are doing, we have started faculty colloquium. And what
Right.
is the purpose of faculty colloquium? That one faculty will have one session in a week, which will be open to everybody, entire university, all students, all faculty members. So if I'm a faculty of hotel management, I'm talking about, say, front desk. Now, every faculty, whether it's of architecture or engineering or any program, they
Right.
would be there and learn from other areas. So this collaborative word, which was used by Abhishek ji, collaborative learning, multidisciplinary learning, all these things are the future direction of education, I personally believe. So good times are going to come, and we can expect a new kind of learning with huge intervention and use of technology. So I'm really looking forward to this new framework of higher education going to happen in India post pandemic, whenever that happens.
Mr. Singh, I think that's a very, very interesting point that you've highlighted. I think the model and the landscape of learning is kind of changed, especially in higher education, right? Where it's not, for example, limited to education institutions and the kids are going out, right? But it also becomes all the more important for education institutions to ensure that their faculty is up to date, right? And I have a couple of questions on that line, and we'll come to that. But before that, I what I want to specifically discuss is that is the requirement from the industry, right? Now, what has happened around pandemic is that, because everybody was limited in a certain environment and they were consuming from just about a few screens, there's a certain layer of homogeneity that has come in, right? That essentially means that there is a massive amount of exposure which is there for students, right? And also the consumers, right? Are we ready with whatever we had, right, in terms of our curriculums, construct, faculty, for the requirements of future? Because this is something that even is uncharted for the industry right now. Industry is also grappling to understand some of those bits and pieces, right? Kinshuk, I'll come to you first, right, on that particular thing. What are your thoughts about this changed environment, right, and how important does it become for education institutions to build a strong relationship, cultivate a strong ongoing relationship, and merge it with the pedagogy that was being offered in the earlier times, right? How do you see that play out over a period?
Your previous question was quite pertinent, and obviously the next question is also an extension to it. A very interesting thing, that happened to the American society during the World War. We are witnessing a catastrophe of the same tune. So, during those times, when all the men went to war, so the women participation in the labor market, it increased manyfold. And the industry realized that women can also contribute equally as men in the labor force. And as a result of that, their overall, labor force improved. their productivity improved, and their labor costs came down. So the society as a whole realized that okay, this is a framework that can work for the long run. It was not something that they opted for. It would have happened over a period of time, but it was a catastrophe of that scale which made it happen.
Right.
So, we are witnessing something on the same lines right now. What we are witnessing is, we are made to adapt to this change of going online. So, obviously, as Professor Vikas said, that, it might come down to 60 or 70%, but it is something that it is here to stay.
Right.
And, once this happens, it changes the overall scheme of things. Because, the student has an option to take a course, to take up modular courses, to take supplemental skill development courses, and like how one of the keynote speakers said, that degrees are not here to stay now.
Correct.
So maybe in 10 years, 15 years down the line, we'll see a shift from degrees to aptitude and assessment based education, wherein the people will be assessed on the basis of on the skills and the aptitude, and only the assessment will take place, and the student will be able to pursue a course or a skill of his choice from anywhere in the world. So that is how it is going to happen, and obviously it will happen with a very closely knit ecosystem of industry and academia. So right now, if you see that from a student perspective, say for example, since we have an engineering college, I can talk about that. A student who entered in 2017, who is about to pass out this year, if you see it from his perspective, when he entered in 2017, cloud computing was a big thing. It was a buzzword. By the time in 2 years down the line, it became a very common thing. It was adopted everywhere, and it became commonplace. And in 2 years time, big data became a big thing. And now big data is also old. And now we're talking about machine learning. So during a span of 4 years of his degree, a student has witnessed a transformational change in the kind of technologies that he's learning. That is the kind of speed of technology that he has to adapt to. So I think we'll have to orient ourselves to disseminating only essential skills during the first 1.5 years of our education, and during the rest of the course, it has to be absolutely fluid and in conjunction with what the industry has has to offer to us. I think it will be the way forward.
Very interesting, Kinshuk. I like the way you dissect it. Right. I'm going to go to Anupam ji around the same question. Anupam ji, how do you envisage the new relationship, right? Given that we are in uncharted territories, right? How do you envisage the new relationship between academia and industry?
When we talk about continuation of education, it is a big problem now, because education process, not about the education. Education is going to stay. Everybody is going to do higher studies and everything, but the change is inevitable. When we talk about the Abhishek ji was talking about, the things I was talking about, that the online education was the thing to come, but it has come earlier, and colleges and institutes are not prepared.
Right.
So what we think that industry should gear up now and take ownership of the institutions,
right,
the course curriculum. They should nurture the educational institutes as the training grounds, but they will also gain from it. They will get the trained manpower earlier. But nowadays we almost say many institutes are claiming of 100% placements and everything. But when the student goes to the company spends around 6 to 7 months training them.
Correct.
Now it is high time that they can change the because online education is there. The best of the teachers are available in the market. This is thing, Coursera and everything. They have the best of the teachers are preparing the content. So industry has an option that they can give their whatever they want to train to the student. They can give to the colleges, to the institutes, and institutes can prepare the students accordingly. Now what has come, that ideas are to be nurtured. Now the earlier what was happening, that teachers were going to in the classroom and they were just delivering what was already written in the book.
Right.
Now the student is already prepared, already studied at that on Google, Wikipedia, everything.
Right.
So what has happened? Sea change has come. Industry has an option to take over. Now you must be knowing that now many new courses, AICT has allowed emerging area courses like AIML. We have last year started BBA data analytics. So I was very susceptible before COVID area. So
Sure.
I was very critical why to start a course which is industry ready in a course course like BBA.
Right.
Because it is traditional course, traditional management course. By so I was thinking that by students will not take it, industry will not accept it.
Right.
On the contrary, when the admission started, we had double the number of students opting for BBA analytics than regular BBA.
Interesting.
Because students are now more aware.
Right.
I'm a 25-year-old institute, so I have a background of with me that I have a controlled thinking. But the
Right.
students now they are
Sure.
very ready.
Sure.
So what industry can and academics nowadays they can opt for preparing students. NEP has also said that you can have scholars,
Right.
you can have entrepreneurs,
Right.
and the industry has an option of entrepreneurs, that is the people who are on the role of the industry but heading a project as their own.
Right.
And they don't have to have a company of their own. They can be a head of the project, which is
Sure.
they can say that yes, I am in the Reliance board and I'm heading this project.
Right.
So now this is high time that both industry and academia sit together. Earlier there was even we have been associated with the AICT for the last 27 years, and AICT has that industry institute partnership cell project from 2001, but it was only on paper, and everybody was saying that okay, industry should come to the college and give something, give ideas. But now that is over. Now both should sit together.
I agree.
Like Ishu was telling us that in the 4 years time there are 4 different technologies came up.
Right.
So if the colleges or students are preparing for one technology, it is old by the next year.
Very
So if industry is there, if they tell us they will train your student for this, then this, and then this, they will also get a trained manpower. We will also get a student who is alert for what is going on in the industry.
Right.
And finally, the product, the student who is coming out, he will be trained for both education also and the industry also. So this is the thinking, and with the beautiful incubation centers coming up all over India.
Right.
I think education institutes, I've seen many of the education institutes offering incubation centers. The students are already prepared for the industry, and industry can have a best of the best of both worlds.
Very interesting. Anupamji, I think the way you summed it up, I kind of agree with that. And this is something which is being discussed all across, right? I think given the influences now become so much more prevalent, right? I mean, cost of data has gone down. People are consuming a lot of video content. There is a lot of exposure, right? The arbitrage that existed between, say, a tier A market and a tier 2 market and global markets, I think is kind of diminished, right? I think it's really about plugging it with skills, right? And I think what you're proposing is building a collaborative model. I think is so much more important, right? But I'm going to take a step back, right? I think institutions still have a massive responsibility to deliver, right? Irrespective of whatever the students consume outside, like Mr. Singh was also highlighted while he was making a point. I think one thing that he highlighted, which is very, very pertinent, is how do you ensure that you have trained faculty, right? Up-to-date faculty, which is available for you, not on, for example, it has to be more consistent. It has to be more ongoing, right? What are your thoughts about that? I'll come to you, Professor Suresh. If you could highlight the need for having a very proficient faculty, which is very in line with what the trends that are shaping up and what's about to come.
Thank you, Ashu. I just wanted to, before I, respond to your question, very briefly, I want to, highlight one aspect which, which is perhaps, something very peculiar to us in the sense that I am the only government university on this panel.
Right.
So, we also have certain issues. These are exciting times, and undoubtedly, I totally agree with the panelists. But this is aspect when you talk about education, I think this cannot be, in a way, sidelined. This is a very important issue. Is that the funding of the universities, particularly state universities. You see, for example, my university does not get 1 rupee from the state government, yet we are expected to follow all the the 7th pay commission to every concession given to student. We cannot raise fees. We have all the limitations, and
but for a unique model of study centers that the founding fathers envisaged, we would not have survived, because we don't get any funding. But in the coming days, this is going to be a big challenge for state universities in terms of infrastructure, because you are not getting money from the students, right? In fact, even the basic tuition fee, they have problem in giving you that, because you are catering to the lower middle class and the poorer sections of the society by and large. Of course, there is a middle class that which is in a minority, and there are people from very, very far off areas where you don't even have digital connectivity, where gadgets is a big problem. So this is something where I would say that in the coming days, CSR funding has to get into in a big way. Where corporate funding, corporate social responsibility will have to be diverted to education to support state education instead. Otherwise, you will have a big divide. Like the urban-rural divide. You are going to have a divide between the well-off universities and the poorly funded universities. This is something in the future we have to look into. I totally agree with you so far as the second point is concerned, that even at our own university, we are giving a lot of emphasis on teacher education. What is happening is that it was not initially, this was more of a fad, online education, particularly in all government universities. So there was hardly any training given. They actually, we threw them into the, so to say, into the swimming pool or the river, and they started swimming. That's what happened in the aftermath of the, corona pandemic. There was no time. I mean, and then suddenly, you will find that there are many senior teachers who do not know, that a telephone has a better usage than the green and red button. So so it was very difficult. So what they would do is that they would sit in front of the screen and teach the way they would teach in a classroom. Now that is different, entirely different. We need to train our teachers to teach online. That is the biggest thing. We need to train our students, how to learn through online. That is also something that we need to teach, because they have been used to a brick and mortar structure. So we think that, well, this is a younger generation, so they can immediately, catch on to it, but that's not the case. Learning online is a different model altogether. You need to really train them. So learning how to learn and teaching how to teach, these both are something very important we need to. So FDPs and all those, HRDCs, they are all in place, no doubt about it. But I think that we give them content, that's fine, but we should teach them how to deliver the content effectively. What are the ways and means in which you can very creatively, innovatively deliver content that it reaches the most inaccessible person, the synchronous, the asynchronous, all the technologies that are available, basic technologies which students should be, able to use. So this training is very important, not only in terms of content, because the focus of FDP programs, we also organized with AICT recently, with Atal, Academy, AICT Teaching and Learning Academy, we organized a wonderful workshop. But that's so far as content, we get the best of teachers, we get the best of trainers from the world over, resource person. That's the advantage of online. But the thing is that how will they impart it further to the students? That is where they need expertise and training. Thank you.
I think that's a very important point that you've highlighted, Professor Suresh. And there are a bunch of other points that you've highlighted, right? Unfortunately, I have paucity of time. I need to move on to the other question. I'm gonna come to Professor Rao, and then I'm gonna come to Professor Pathak. Professor Rao, Professor Pathak, I think so. One particular problem which is very significant is that as soon as so typically, universities, education institutions that are operating in a tier A city or a tier 1 city, right, of course, has a lot of access into, say, for example, faculty development programs, has availability to resources, industries there. So the opportunity for them to interact is very, very different, right? How do you ensure a similar impact when you're operating in, say, a tier 2 city or a tier 2 market, right? How do you ensure a similar experience and exposure to students who are at these universities, because they are far away from the absolute criticality of skills which is required by the industry? How do you take care of that? Professor Rao, we can start with you.
Very interesting question, Ashu. Before I come to that, I just want to summarily sort of give my views with regard to the first is with regard to the industry academia partnership.
Right.
See, today the industry itself is going through a lot of challenges. It
Correct.
has to be competitive. It has to be competitive. Now the industry is embracing what is called the Industry 4.0. Unless they do that, they will not be competitive.
Right.
And as a part of that, sort of what you notice is the future of jobs is undergoing a dramatic change. So many of the jobs that are existent earlier, they are going away.
Correct.
As per the Future of Jobs report, more than something like 27% of the jobs that are there today will not be existing after 5 years. On the other hand, a lot of new jobs are coming up. So considering that in education, we turn out a product which has got a cycle time of anywhere between 2 to 4 years or even 6 years. So this being the case, we need to prepare our students to face the situation, to face the job market after 5 or 6 years. So essentially, the industry, what they've been saying is one of the most important skills what we need is a digital readiness. Earlier, they used to talk of IT readiness. Now they wanted digital readiness because the entire industry has embraced, a digital working. Today, in fact, all the companies, they're all working from home. They continue to work like that, for some more months to come.
Right.
Some of the companies, they're setting up a pool of people. They'll be allowed to work from home continuously all time to come. So that is where I think the academia, we need to understand what the industry requirements are there. And
Sure.
correspondingly, we need to have a partnership with them in the entire value chain. Today, what happens is most of the academia, we go to the industry only for campus placements. That
Right.
is the last step. On the other hand, the partnership has to start with what are the programs that I have to introduce.
Sure.
And typically, like what is the curriculum that must be there. Then likewise, sort of on how we are going to deliver the curriculum and what are the competencies that are required. And then only I should come to the placements. Only
But-
then, sort of that is where we talk of a collaborative model of working into that.
But
That is
Professor
the
Rao,
first thing. Yeah.
Professor Rao, my specific question is, how do you ensure that similar level of delivery is done for tier 2, tier 3 markets as well?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you brought in. That is where today, like in fact, the same industry academia partnerships, if you notice, if the institution is good, the industry is willing to go anywhere.
Sure.
Today, if you look at the IITs and IIMs that are there, all of them are not in the metros, not in the prime cities. Sort of that is where what we noticed is, industry realizes that they need to get good people. So that being the case, if the institution is good, if they are proactive in the industry academia partnership, they come forward. Just to give an example to that, like, on the industry academia partnership, our university has done a lot of work. So much so that today we have got partnerships with companies like Larsen & Toubro.
Right.
With Bosch, the multinational, we are setting up a center of excellence in the skill building.
Right.
And we are one of the very few in the entire country where they have gone with that, particularly in the Eastern zone into that, So on one hand, that industry is there. How did that happen? It has come because we went forward and we discussed with them. We gave a plan saying that these are the things what we want to do. Now, thanks to the kind of technology that is available, like for the 2020 as well as 2021, all of our universities for the professional programs, internship is a compulsory thing, summer internship.
Right.
Earlier, they used to go to the industry. Now, because of the COVID, they are unable to go. Our university have arranged for online internships with all of our students in all the streams.
Right.
Sort of be it in technology, be it in law, be it ITR, be it in management. The industry, like when once we went and approached them, they were very happy. And for that, what we had to do was we had to train our students.
Sure.
Because if they have to take an internship, through digital,
I think Professor Rao,
that is what is kind of required from our side to that. Yeah,
I think you're making a very, very important point. You've made a very, very important point, right? That leadership is very critical, right? Irrespective of wherever you are, whatever location that you have, leadership is very important. If there is an intention, you will get through your way, right? And I think with the new evolved environment where there's connectivity, industry will not shy away irrespective of wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
Professor Pathak, if I can have you to make some quick comments.
What I feel clearly is the situation in the tier 2 and tier 4 cities is really very, very pathetic. I'll just quote an example. The IIT Kanpur, so they conducted a survey of 2,789 students.
Sure.
They are telling that 9% of the students, they are not able to download the notes that the IIT Kanpur is sending to the students. You can imagine how enlightened are the students of IIT. Then they are telling
33% of the students, they are not able to connect properly. The IIT Mandi, the director was telling 50% of the students were in the hills. They are not able to really reach to us, and we are not.
That's a very real problem that you're highlighting.
Now it's a 14% penetration is there of the internet in the rural area, and 46% in the say upon the urban areas. So this can be a big problem. And moreover, what I feel to my mind, say when we are talking now only the cocktail of problems that have been brought by the pandemic. Let us go back to before 2019, whether we have all along been receiving the brickbats from the all corners of higher education. Somehow probably they are not doing anything, and they are creating only adding liability. Somebody was commenting 1 minute, I will like to quote a satire that he told, न पढ़ते तो 100 तरह खाते कमाकर, वो खोए गए और तालीम पाकर, न जंगल में रेवड़ चराने के काबिल, न बाजार में बोझ झेलने के काबिल. They were been only up to 12th standard, they would have done the blue collar job. But now since they are having the BTech degree and the MBA degree, so they are not prepared to do anything less than the white collar job.
I think
virtually they are adding to the liability.
Professor Parak, I think what you stepped on is a very critical problem, right? I think you're talking about something very as basic as infrastructure, right? Something which we're still building, we're still in the process of building, right? So while we of course talk about digitizing education, we talk about all the possibilities, connectivity, everything, right? What you've stepped on is very, very basic requirement, which is right infrastructure, right? And I think once we get that right, I think we're talking about a very evolved kind of a learning, like what Professor Rao highlighted. I think intention is there and backed by the right kind of infrastructure. I think collaborations are possible. Possibility of building it, together with the industry is very, very possible. I'm going to move on to my last question for this particular panel. My sincere.
Asu, to permit 1 minute, I would like to intervene.
Sure, sir, please.
School in Philadelphia, they have really created a very good example who you also should follow. They in the entire Philadelphia, where really they are in the suburban area. So those people, they were not able to get connected. So they have now just, Vikas was telling or other speakers also have the report, if we can have a common platform and all those talented people that we are having, that we can accrue to them, that will be better. Yeah.
I think that's a very important point that you've highlighted. And, I will circle back to you on that separately post this event. But I'm going to move on to the last question for this particular panel that I have. How critical has, while we of course talk about industry academic collaboration, we talk about, the backend infrastructure, we talk about, building the programs together, learning together, having the faculty which is more aware of what's required in the industry and so on and so forth, right? So we're talking about a very evolved ecosystem, right? But also, across all conversations, across many, many conversations that I've been listening to and hearing, I think everything is inward looking, right? We're not really talking about global exposure. We're not talking about global collaborations, right? Abhishek, I'm going to come to you. I think there is a lot of work that you are doing on that front. You are, across many forums, you're representing, your university, and I think, the education industry at large, right? What are your thoughts on creating a global collaborative environment?
I think with this pandemic, one thing has happened that the global environment has become more closer. Sure. I think I would just like to put one initiative which we have been doing from last 2 years. So we have this concept of connected classrooms with all our partners across the world, sure, where similar kind of lectures are mapped and they are taught jointly between their faculties from the partner university and our faculty members over digital format, over Zooms or the video callings and other things happening. And then the students are then put together in groups and they do joint projects from both the partner university and our university. I think these kind of collaborations have gained more importance because of this pandemic and the opportunities that is provided by this pandemic. And I think building a global environment is also important because our students should also have that exposure of the social exposure of working with people from different regions of the world, because ultimately India is one of the biggest markets with every country is looking to come into. And if our students are more equipped to work in teams, in diverse teams or from different regions of the world, then I think they have better opportunity or better understanding when they meet some similar people in the workplace. So I think it's very, very important, and it needs to be given its due importance and due prominence when you plan the whole structure of your university.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Mr. Singh, I'm going to come to you. I think there is a lot of work that ITM has been doing as a group, right? And I think there's a lot of initiative that you've taken personally of evangelizing, global partnerships and global play for the students at your university. Why don't you talk a little about it? The importance of having a global, partnership in place, thinking global.
No, it's very essential now because, I personally believe that in next 10 years time, India is going to be the, global exporter of human resource. Even today, out of 500, Fortune 500 companies, around 60 of them are headed by Indian higher education students.
Right.
You talk about Deloitte, talk about Microsoft, Google. Few days back, Raghu Raghuram became, CEO of VMware. So I personally believe that Indian higher education, has proved beyond doubt that our students are bright. And
Right.
we are, thanks to Honorable, Prime Minister, we are actually on the, way of becoming, world guru. Why I'm saying this, our students are proving again and again that they can adopt to anything. They go to Dubai, they go to Middle East, they go to Canada, US, England,
Right.
Australia. They adapt everywhere.
Right.
It's very essential that we expose them to those practices, cross-cultural learning,
Sure.
learning from various areas, geographies. This is very essential. What we are doing tie-ups with various universities in Russia, in Singapore, at
Right.
various places.
Right.
The purpose is not only for kind of exchange program of faculty and students. Even now, using this online platform, they can learn from those faculty members. So we are inviting those foreign university faculty members to come and have a kind of chit chat with our students. And this is, I tell you, this is going to be one step in future of education, that students need to be exposed to cross-cultural practices world over. I personally believe India being the youngest country, 28 is the median age of Indian population. Next 10 years we are going to be most populous country. If we train them, if we train these young kids well, if we make them learn vocation, skills, higher education, I think India has amazing next 20-30 years.
Wonderful.
And global exposure is one very important part. And we as university leaders, we need to work in this direction in a very committed way. This is my comment on this, Ashu. Very essential
Sure,
step.
thank you very much. I'm running out of time. My guests on the other panel are waiting. Kinshuk, I'm going to very clump you. Professor Suresh, I'm going to very quickly your comments. Kinshuk, I'll start with you and then I'll come to Professor Suresh.
I think I've summed it up, but we have really flattened the ground. Every opportunity across education will be now in due course of time will be available for all. So
Sure.
the democratization of education has already started. I think only time will tell how we as educationists cope with it.
Interesting. That's short, crisp, and sweet. Professor Suresh, your comments on blending it with what's happening globally.
Absolutely. And I think that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think that when resources are available globally and they are also available online, we should look at, further more collaborations, not just globally, but also within the country, So I think the key word is no more competition. It's about cooperation and collaboration.
Sure. I think fantastic. With that, thank you very much, each one of you. My sincere apologies. We were a little late. And, while I would want this panel to continue, unfortunately, such panels are, we have to sort of stick to time. My team is going to reach out to each one of you. We're going to record separate sessions, to capture your views on certain topics that we've discussed today. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It was lovely having you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashu Agarwal, and thank you, our esteemed panelists. Introducing panel 2, policy for unlimited global universities. Panel 2 is joined by Dr. Christopher Abraham, CEO and Head, Dubai Campus, Senior VP at SP Jain School of Global Management, Atul Khosla, Founder and Vice Chancellor, Shulni University, Mr. Alessandro, Managing Director, SDA Bocconi Asia Center, Asa Grover, Head Startup India Hub, Invest India, Dr. Akhil Sahani, Managing Director, the Sahani Group, Mumbai, Dheeraj Gyani, Director, Government and Education Engagement, GitHub, Niranjan Singh, founder and CEO, founder, chairman, ERA World School, and Maharaja Institute of Management and Technology. Raghav Gupta, Managing Director, India and APEC for Coursera. Sanjay Padode, President, Vijayabhumi University, Chairman of IFIM Institutions. Dear panelists, we welcome you to the second session. This session is monitored by Avin Chakravarti, co-founder AsiaTech Journal, Ashu Agarwal, India Advisor, AsiaTech Journal. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm gonna start with apologies on the outset, right? My apologies. We've been running late. I wish this was physical, right? And I think when you organize an event, I think that's when you start to realize how important physical is, right? Irrespective of how we rave about technology and technology replacing the physical settings that we have built around us. But thank you so much for joining us. It's a very, very important topic that we have at hand today. I would request a quick round of introduction before we move into the discussions.
This is Atul. I'm sorry for interrupting. We can't switch our video on, so you'll have to tell technology to make that happen for us.
So just 1 second.
We'll get that done. So.
We can have Dr. Shahani to start the introductions while the technology team takes care of the backend.
Oh, sorry, me.
Yes,
so I'm Dr. Akhil Shahani. I run the Shahani Group. We have a range of initiatives in the global education space. We run colleges in Bombay and other parts of India. We have an Edtech platform where we are running courses online. We've interacted with universities in the UK, Australia, and the US, where we're offering pathway programs to these places. So yeah, I'm a big fan of international education, and my doctorate is in the area of student employability. So that's also a big passion of mine.
Super. Alessandro, we see you there.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Alessandro Giuliani, and I've launched the India campus of SDA Bocconi School of Management from Italy. And I've been managing it for the last 10 years, where we run a full-time 2 years master program, an executive master, and executive education, where we are at the top of the world.
Wonderful. Dr. Abraham, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me to this August gathering. I'm Dr. Christopher Abraham, CEO and head of the Dubai campus of SP Jain School of Global Management. I'm also the Senior Vice President, Institution Development there. SP Jain, for some of us who may not know, is a global school with, it's an Australian business school with campuses in Dubai, Singapore, Sydney, and Mumbai, and ranked among the top 100 by Financial Times, by The Economist, and by Times Higher Education Wall Street Journal. We're also ranked among the top 10 and top 20 by Forbes. Looking forward to a fascinating conversation.
Wonderful. Atul, I've been a big fan of your posts, right? And yeah, looking forward to this one.
Thank you, Ashu, and good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I can see a few faces, which are friends. So Raghav, hi, lovely to see you. Alessandro, I think we're supposed to speak late in the day. So lovely to meet all of you. My name is Atul Khosla. I am the co-founder and vice chancellor of Shulini University. Shulini is a bit of a quirky university, trying to think outside the box, trying to shake things the way things happen in higher education. So there are three things in a nutshell we're trying to do. First, we're trying to bring deep research and innovation into the university system in India. So we were probably pioneers in that, where we said we think research can happen in private universities. And I'm very proud to say that as we speak, our citations and research indices are number 2 in India, just behind IISc Bangalore, which is a huge achievement for a private university. I think the second stance we took was to be squeaky clean. Absolutely no left pocket, right pocket, which is a big stance in the Indian construct, and I won't go beyond that. That's our second mission. And our third mission really is to say that we want to work with what we call the lesser privileged of the country. How do we bring world-class education to the lesser privileged? And we're working very closely with Raghav and Coursera on campus in that endeavor. And these are three things that make Shulini special. We are located in Himachal Pradesh. We've got a beautiful campus in the middle of a pine forest. And we will speak about policy, because I think we need to break the shackles of policy to make Indian educational institutions the best in the world. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Raghav, if we can have you to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Ashu. Hi, Atul. Good to see you as well. And hello, everyone. My name is Raghav Gupta. I'm Managing Director for Coursera for India and Asia Pacific. My home is in Gurgaon, but for the last 1 year, like many of us, I've been living on Zoom and other platforms. So that's what I do. I lead 3 parts of our work. So we have a consumer platform, we have a degrees and online certificates platform, and then we have an enterprise platform. And in enterprises, we work with universities with a platform called Coursera for Campus, which is where we have a partnership with Atul and Shulini University as well, which is very, very successful. I'm the global lead for that, and pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. Asta, I'll come to you before I go to Dheeraj.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Astha. Pleasure to be among you all. Unlike the others, I come from the policy and the government side, enabling young minds to become entrepreneurs, to become startups, and igniting the spirit of entrepreneurship among them. I head the Startup India team at Invest India. Startup India is the flagship initiative of the government of India, and Invest India was given the mandate in 2016, the year in which the action plan was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister to spearhead this initiative. Wonderful to be among all. Thank you.
Asta, it's a pleasure to have you, and I think your role couldn't have been more important, right? I think this pandemic is, made startups all the more relevant, and for all of us normal people to look at technology in a more improved and a respected way, right? So it's good to have you with us. Dheeraj, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thank you, and good morning to everyone. My name is Dheeraj Gyani. I'm responsible for the government and education engagement at GitHub. GitHub, if you have heard about it, we are the largest platform which is used by software developers and people who want to code to do their best software development.
Interesting. I think it's a phenomenal panel that I have, and I would want to start my with the first question, which is around global opportunities essentially require very global skills, right? One, is that a correct perspective? Second, how can we institutionalize this practice, right? Raghav, I'm going to come to you first to answer this particular question, right? Given Coursera is a very global platform, it's kind of bringing in that required ammunition for universities to empower their students and students in general, right? Across various categories, right? Do you think this perspective is right of having a global skill set for global opportunity?
Yeah, I think as context, it's important to possibly think about which India we are talking about, because as all of us know, right, there are many Indias, and so for a part of the country, global skill sets don't matter, but for a lot of parts of the country, global skill sets do matter, right? And so depending on which industry one is in and what our context is, if you're working in the technology services industry, technology products industry, automobiles industry, finance industry, insurance industry, pharma industry, healthcare, global skills do completely matter. Because we work with businesses, I can tell you that the pace at which skills are changing in businesses in India is phenomenal. 4 years ago, a chief learning officer would say learning and development and new skilling is my priority. Today, even a CHRO, a CTO, a CDO, possibly in some cases CEOs are also saying that reskilling and upskilling people is an important priority for us. 90% plus of businesses in the country are digitizing or have already digitalized. And some are succeeding, some are not succeeding, right? We see bank websites go down because of technology issues, which is not a great sign from a consumer confidence standpoint. But very safe to say that skills are changing very rapidly. It's nothing new, skills have changed in the past as well. I think the biggest difference is the pace at which skills are changing. I think that's the biggest difference this time around. And I think largely we are seeing the skilling happening in the technology space, but also I would say in the human skills space. How we work with each other on online platforms is quite different from how it might have been in the past. So yes, I mean, depending on which India we are talking about, but definitely something that we are seeing at least on our platform.
Interesting. Dheeraj, what is your view on that? I mean, GitHub has been a global platform, right? I think developers all across the board are on GitHub, right? That's like the primary resource when it comes to building your skill sets, awareness, what's happening, the latest trends. I think it's a very comprehensive platform in that sense. What do you think about the global skill set that we have the possibility of building, inculcating, and serving the world?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Ashu. So I would actually sort of say that for me personally, I don't really understand what global skill set means. I think skill sets are now they don't have any regional or any boundaries associated to it. And just to sort of I'll take a minute. Your construct of the panel is fantastic, and that's what I was thinking, that when we talk about a skill set requirement for a student, in my mind there are 4 stakeholders. One is of course the students who are the core. Then you have the teachers over it. Then you have the institutions, who are actually providing the platform to the students. And then you have, a very important surround, which is the policymakers, organizations like Coursera, GitHub, who are not really part of the core education ecosystem, but we are equally, or more important than equally important than as an institution. Right. Now, the skill set, the students, whether they are in a tier 2 city or a tier 3 town, their hunger, their hunger for knowledge and skill is always there. It doesn't matter by which regions we are in, but the platform varies. And when we talk about the institution infrastructure, or let's say the quality of teachers, that varies as we go into different parts of the world today. Sure. And that's where I think the surround that I was talking about is getting extremely important. And that's where today's GitHub is being used by millions of students in India. And they are collaborating with their counterparts worldwide. And that's probably, I would say, that's the sole reason why we are so successful. It's pure global collaboration and co-building softwares or technology and learning from each other. So extremely important. And I think, in the course of time, we'll answer more questions around it, that how and what is extremely important. But I think in my mind, these are the 4 stakeholders that probably need a different strategy to get more successful.
Interesting. Neeraj, essentially when I meant global skill set, and I think I buy your point when you say that, this is now it's all available, you can really sort of upskill yourself, through various courses that are available, or, through public available repository that's out there. What I essentially meant was from a market exposure standpoint, right? When you're working in an evolved economy, the requirement of skill set is very different, right? And that might not be an immediate priority when you are in a market which is still picking up its pace to match up to that market size, right? But my second part of my question, and Akhil, I'll come to that, right, is essentially institutionalization of this practice, right? Right now, what is happening is there are certain moments which has happened, right? But how do you ensure that this is something which is blended with what's being offered on the campus? And I think that's very, very important. Having that perspective is very important, and especially today, when I think we're in a very, very dynamic ecosystem, which not even the industry completely is able to understand is how it's going to shape up, right? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and that's a supremely important area to sort of work on. Let me give you an example. So when GitHub, when we came to India last year, one of the first initiatives we wanted to launch was a externship program or a fellowship or an internship program. Now we have launched that program. There are about 20 companies who are offering internship and fellowship to students. Right. 60% of these companies are international, and they don't have active base in India. So I won't call Microsoft as an international company, Microsoft as an Indian company, but a startup in Russia. Right. They are now taking students from India primarily because they know that here the talent is, but then they are grooming them that how do you create products for Russian environment or Russian customers.
Dheeraj, I'll just come to you. This was a question I wanted Akhil to take up, right? Because there's a campus which is on. I will just come to you that on internships bit, right? I think that's a very important bit. But Akhil, why don't we have you take that up?
So just want to make sure it's the same question that you want to ask.
It is, yes.
All right. All right, good. So, all right. So I actually tend to have a sort of a counterintuitive view on the whole concept of global skills, right? So one thing we need to understand is that as educationists, our students are going to be working for the next 45 years in their careers, right? And we also cannot control where they're going to work. I mean, the very students may actually set up becoming programmers in Russian startups. They may actually do business in China. They may set up in the oil industry in Qatar. So one thing I think we need to understand is that what you would call the skills that will make them employable across the long term, beyond regardless of which industry they go to, right? I'm making a distinction between hard skills and what's called softer skills. But softer skills, we talk about the transferable skills. So what my research in global employability has discovered, and again, this is where my doctorate is basically identified 5 key skill sets which will make the kid do very well no matter where they are, right? And a lot of this stuff is very obvious, but let me just reiterate it, right? Of course, communication skills are a done deal, but the ability to work well with others, collaborate with others, that's a key skill set. The second thing is a skill set of critical thinking. That means looking at a lot of information coming to you and identifying what is the right path to take, because there's a lot of crap that's coming to us in various forms. How do you think through it and come up with problem solving? The third skill set is a proactive mindset that continuously learns. Because at the end of the day, what we're teaching today is going to be irrelevant in 2 years' time. I mean, most of us, only if you're continuously learning are you able to be able to adapt to the new environment. The fourth, of course, would be a professional work ethic, because the thing is that, and that's something that most people prefer. Unfortunately, we don't teach our kids a professional work ethic. It's more like, okay, you can study for exams last minute, give your projects late, we don't care. That is not a professional work ethic. So professional work ethic is critical. I think the last thing is, and this is actually, again, another counterintuitive thing, the concept of a global mindset. Now, when you talk a global mindset, unfortunately, our understanding of global mindset is, okay, US, UK, Australia, Anglo-Saxon thing, and maybe a more tech focused. Understand one thing, in the next 45 years, these kids could be working, like I said, in the Middle East, in China, could be working in Central Asia, could be working in Africa. Understand which are the fastest growing economies. All due respect to the Americans and the British, those are not the fastest growing economies. So therefore, one thing we as Indians have to step away from our Anglo mindset and say, look, why can't we teach global skills? How do you make a kid understand how a Chinese person thinks? They have a very different mindset to, let's say, Americans do. How do you actually help someone from the Arab world do business with you? So the idea is that when we are looking at interacting with institutions around the world, step away from the classic Anglo-Saxon countries and let's look at other countries. I mean, I don't see why we can't collaborate with Russian universities. They're fantastic with medical technology and engineering. Let's talk about people in, let's say, Africa. We can actually look at where they do better jugaad than we do. So the point being is, I mean, seriously, I mean, I've seen some fantastic, really good quality institutions coming out of Africa where they actually get students paying 1/3 the fees that we charge. So at the end of the day, we need to understand, if we are not ourselves as educationists having a mindset beyond the Anglo-Saxon world in India, we should ourselves start developing those relationships in other countries and let's start building a global mindset. So just to repeat, the 5 characteristics that make our kids globally capable will be good team working, critical thinking, professional work ethic, continuous learning, and a global mindset outside the small, narrow view that we have.
Alessandro, I'll have you to answer this particular one. Actually, you've highlighted some very interesting points, and I will come back to you through the course. Alessandro, I'll have you answer it. I think you're coming from the outside, and there is a certain perspective that you bring to the table, and then of course you're kind of working with the students in India, right? I would love you to answer this one, and then Dr. Abraham, I'm coming to you, right? I think you're in a very, very interesting position. I would want to cover and end this question with you as the next speaker. Alessandro, why don't you?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Akhil. You have really opened my way. I would like to hire you or to have an interaction for our promotion, because you really stole all my points. And we are extremely global for sure. We are a business school that is on the among the top 10 in the world. We have 260 exchange programs across the globe and 25 double degrees. So we believe a lot in external exposure, international exposure. But rather than global skills, I would say I keep on reminding to my students about soft skills and exactly the 5 ones that Akhil was mentioning, among which in the last one I include global exposure. Our program is very heavy in global exposure with a compulsory semester of specialization in Italy, with 85% of the faculty coming from Italy. And on campus, we merge our students for 1 semester with a double degree from France and Italy, several programs across the globe, Canada, Spain, China, and so on. But more than that, I would say that Indian students are extremely adaptive. Okay, so the working abroad, those global skills are not the critical factor for me to expose them international, because that they will learn very fast. And I see when they go to Italy, they go for 4 months, they come back that they're totally different. They behave in a different way, they think, they dress, they talk, everything changes. They adapt very quickly. What the global exposure gives is the ability to break the mind structures that they have, which are very strong in India, and approach the problems with different perspectives. And that happens, in the first semester, they are merged. We send to our India campus the double degree from Edtech Paris and Bocconi Milan. We have such clashes that you cannot imagine in terms of rigor, in terms of thinking, in terms of approaching the problem. No, we should do that. We always have to manage problems for a month and a half. Then suddenly there is an explosion of love and common understanding and a different way of approaching problem. So the global exposure for me is part of the soft skills that allows you to think out of the box, to think more critically, and to understand other points of view, to appreciate other points of view.
Interesting. Dr. Abraham? Your mic is on mute.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let me start with a very interesting research that was done a few years back at Cornell University. Cornell wanted to find out whether there is an impact of global exposure to the mindset of problem solving and creativity. So that we had 3 categories of people, one who were all American, the other one was American with exposure to another country, and the third was multiple country exposure. All of them were given a fascinating problem solving scenario. It's called the Dunker candle problem. A candle, a box of matches, and a small bunch of brass tacks. The challenge is to fix the candle on the wall and light it and ensure that the wax does not drip on the ground. Sounds simple. It's one of the most fascinating challenges. Now, here are the results. 18% solved it from the all-American category. 40% solved it from the 2-country exposure. And guess what? The ones who had multi-country exposure actually did more than 70%. Reason? The human brain, the neuroscience of learning tells us that every time you're exposed to a new culture, and as rightly pointed out by Alessandro, the ability to adapt to new scenarios. So that's a critical dimension. Second one. Now, in 2010, Harvard University did a global study on tens of thousands of managers across the world, wanted to find out critical skills that are required. And Howard coined, in its own inimitable way, a very interesting terminology called global intelligence, right on top. And global intelligence validates what Dr. Akhil said in terms of those 5 skills, which is what it's all about. It's about the mindset, the global mindset. In fact, he took off the word that I wanted to use, but thank you very much, sir. So global mindset. So what is a global mindset? The ability to work in any kind of diverse environment, understanding that there would be differences, disparities, and divergences of ideas, but working together. Now, here's another interesting thought. So when you are exposed, I mean, you can do this sitting. I mean, you can say, okay, how does the Brazilian culture work? Or how does the African culture work? But I believe I've been in the system for the last 20 odd years, and I can confidently tell you that you need to have physical exposure. When you go to that particular place, when you get immersed in that culture, when you get immersed in that business practices, trust me, it has a completely different experience. Taking off from what my esteemed colleague said, you start in Dubai. So you're learning the Middle Eastern way of doing things, which is very different from the Indian way of doing things. So you come to, and we already have a mindset. Middle East means terrorism. Middle East means fundamentalism. And when you come into Dubai, you say, oh boy, this is as global and international as you can get. Now, 4 to 5 months they're studying there. Then the moment they're getting comfortable in that particular environment, pull them out and take them to a first world country like Sydney. Now he has to unlearn everything he or she has learned. Dr. Akhil was talking about continuous learning. So now this fellow has to unlearn everything he learned in the Middle East and go to the first world country. He's getting settled there. He's understanding how a Western or a Commonwealth country works. And then He's pulled off to Singapore. Now imagine the human brain. This is fascinating because the neuroscience of learning says every time you do this, the brain is absorbing. The brain is absorbing all these experiences. It actually doesn't know what to do with it. This is an interesting part. It absorbs. Now fast forward 6 months, 1 year down the line, the guy is placed either in a company, a multinational company in India, or an Indian company which has gone multinational, or a multinational company in a multinational environment. It doesn't matter. And you will find the human brain is a pattern, a detector and a dot connector. So when that problem comes, this fellow's brain works on overdrive, and you would find some fascinating insights coming out every time there's a problem. This is validated by science. This is validated by learning. This is validated by our own students. We had a student who went and worked on a Hebrew. This was one of our top IT companies, and this guy was selected as part of campus placement. They were working on a multi-million-dollar project with Israel. Everybody was working, and finally this guy puts his hand up and says, everything we've discussed so far is wrong. Why? Because the Middle Eastern way of interpretation, communication is not the way we write left to right, but from right to left. The whole perspective changes. So these are nuances which we have to learn, and I think I'll share more.
And I think Dr. Abraham, you've highlighted a very different kind of a complexity, right? So, and I think what the way I started this panel and the way I envisioned this panel in my mind was that you need skills for a superior market and for, say, a market which is, say, catching up, or a tier 2 market or tier 3 market, whatever, right? But I think what you've highlighted, what, say, Alessandro has highlighted, what Dr. Shahani has highlighted is very different. It's a very it's a complexity around cultures, right? And irrespective of, skill is homogeneous, right? Culture is dynamic, and I think that's a very different kind of a complexity that we're talking about. But Atul, I'm going to come to you on this particular one, right? And I think how is it that while we've spoken about institutionalization, right? What is it that you can do at a policy level? I think, see, India has largely been an inward-looking market, right? We've continued to think, how is it that we can cater ourselves better? We've built models for our own regionalities. We have built models for our, people. We've done all of those bits and pieces, right? I think it's now time, right? I think world economies have been built on export, right? Which essentially means that all the problems that were highlighted by Raghav, by Dheeraj, by Alessandro, Dr. Shahani, and Dr. Abraham, right? Essentially entails having a very beautiful blend of all of the aspects, right? Which is the latest skills and, of course, the cultural complexities, right? How is it at a policy level you can build a model which, say, education system in India can absorb and and kind of and build for the future? What are your thoughts about it?
So I'll break my answer into 3 components. First, a very strong view. Indians are not global, and let's accept that unless they get exposed.
Right.
I'll give a small example over here. When I was at McKinsey, I would do a lot of hiring. In fact, I was in charge of campus hiring as a partner. Sure. And we did I wouldn't say we did an experiment. This just happened. We hired 20 guys from IIM Ahmedabad, and we pushed them over to New York City, to the New York office. And guess what? 19 of them failed. And I was like zapped. I thought Indian guys are really good. How can so many of them fail? What we realized as we sort of started unpeeling the onion was that as Indians, you're not exposed to life. Now let's compare an Indian MBA graduate with an American graduate, let's say from Harvard. By the time a Harvard graduate finishes or her MBA, he or she would have bought a home, sold a home, traveled the world, bought a car, sold a car, probably married, probably had 20 girlfriends. Compare that with an IIM Ahmedabad graduate, never bought a home, never been outside home, probably never had a girlfriend ever in his life, never traveled the world, probably now a little bit here and there, not exposed. And major cultural challenges that happen. So we need to bring that into our education. I think that's one.
Right.
Coming back to policy, I think it's extremely important that our policymakers start understanding this need. And I'll throw some numbers over here. First, from why are global alliances and policy interventions so important? We have heard about the new education policy. We've heard that we need to take our gross enrollment ratio to 55%. Just to do that, just for higher education, just to do that, we need $2 trillion over the next 10 years. I'll again repeat, $2 trillion in higher ed. And aid going to come from
local domestic players. It ain't going to come from the government. We need very sizable foreign direct investment in higher ed coming into India just for new education policy.
Right.
And for that. If you want a workforce to become global, then there needs to be a free flow of talent, which needs to happen between, let's say, an Indian institution to a global institution. And I know Alessandro struggles every day. He's on the thin edge of regulation. So we have to start challenging existing regulation that exists.
Right.
I think the lines are dividing very rapidly. That UGC says you need to be, you need to have certain regulatory things. I sit in a highly regulated market of Himachal. My regulator doesn't allow me to do hundreds of things. If I go to Raghav and say, let's start a Coursera on-campus program, I need to take 100 permissions for that. So I think all of us together have to go back to our regulators, which, by the way, is extremely fractured right now, starting from UGC to all the different regulators that exist, and make them aware that, look, globalization is important. Market forces have to come into play. Let the market decide, and not rankings of NRF or NAC grades, etc., which are arbitrary and sometimes bought, as we all know. Let the market decide. There will be great partnerships that will come in. There will be some people who might get burnt on the wrong side, but Indians do not get exposed, like Alexandra said. If we do not get our Indian student outside into Italy or into China or into other platforms, either with bilateral exchange programs or with training programs or with online content or any different form of internationalization, our talent will not be global, and that's a fact. And we have to solve, Ashu, not for the smart guys of IIM Ahmedabad, mind you. Sure. We have to solve for what I call the belly of India. The belly of India have to become geographic entrepreneurs. They have to be ready to go out and conquer the world. They should be ready to go to China if I got a supply chain problem and buy stuff over there. They have to be ready to move to Russia. They have to be ready to move to wherever in the world. But how many of them can do that? Very few. So policy will play a very, very big role. The good news is COVID has shaken all of us up, Ashu. Regulators a little more open than they were earlier. Hopefully they will continue. Hopefully they'll allow us to do exciting things. Hopefully many of you will get support from regulation, and we can together go towards the regulators and ask for a change in regulation. So I genuinely hope that regulation changes, policy changes, and I'll end with one last thought. Take any industry in the world, any industry that's highly regulated, that has policy that is not very proactive, will not see innovation. Innovation is stifled by regulation, period. It happened in financial services, it's happening in higher ed. So my pitch today is to say, let's break all the shackles. Let's think not just outside the box, let's break the box. We should have an education system that should be fundamentally different, complete free flow of people coming into India and vice versa.
Atul, I think that's a phenomenal point that you've highlighted. One morning development that has happened is that we will be organizing a session with the Minister of Education, and I think I couldn't be loving this panel more. I think the kind of exchange that has happened in the last few minutes has been absolutely phenomenal. I'll have my colleague Avin to take the next question before I get towards the end of the conversation. Avin.
Yeah, thank you, Ashu. I think we're having a very interesting conversation. I have a two-part question. So we're looking at the students, we're looking at globalization of education, but we also should be looking at academia, teachers. How can they be supported by upskilling them to meet the global best practices? And the second part of the question is, will cross-border internships and assignments improve the understanding of students and help them to get a grip of cross-cultural and global operating mindset? I think Dr. Christopher Abraham can start with this.
All right, very interesting question. So global intelligence. If someone has to be nurtured on global intelligence, I think it requires multiple components. One of it is, and we learned this by experience, of course, global destinations, which I mentioned in my earlier comment. Second one, it has to be taught by global faculty, right? And I'll tell you why. Initially, we had an all-Indian faculty lineup, and like Dr. Atul said, it's that IIM story. So these are very smart Indian professors, but not understanding the global mindset. So we had some challenges there. So we had to absolutely diversify and look at. And as we speak, we have professors coming from 30 plus different countries across the world. We sign up with them, contract with them, they come over and they share their perspectives. In fact, just to give a very interesting context, the macroeconomics module is actually taught by a professor from Greece. So that guy is going to talk about the European financial crisis, how Greece was, so there's a lot of controversy around it. I don't want to get into it, but he learns it from the horse's mouth. The third important component, which I think is extremely important, is the global student community. So you need to have a cohort that comes from different parts of the world. And here's the best part. Now, Indians are very comfortable in our comfort zones, our gaon, our community, our states. And then the fellow tries to find cliques. So what we do is we break that right from the hostel community through the classroom groups. We break them into multicultural, multilingual, multinational groups. And it's not easy because the Chinese perspective, as rightly pointed out, is very different from the Indian perspective. The Russian perspective is very different from the Brazilian perspective. It's tough. And you need to learn that from them. And that learning really helps. For a lot of us, speaking in our local lingo is very common. We have to break that mindset and say the only common language, like what Carlos Ghosn did when he took over Nissan, is to speak the international language of English. So these are some very critical components. Coming to faculty, faculty need to have faculty exchanges. So we encourage our professors to go to other universities. Like Alessandro said, we have partnerships with many, many universities across the world, faculty exchange, student exchange, and in our 4-year undergraduate program where they spend 1 year in each of these cities, they have an opportunity to go to one of our partner universities for a year, and they also have an opportunity to actually work on projects with international students. So I think all these things put together create a very unique global citizen who can work anywhere, including India. There's nothing wrong in coming back to India.
Thank you, sir. Raghav, what are your opinions on this at faculty, and also what do you think about international assessments and internships?
Yeah. So let me take the faculty development question first, Arvind. And I think, I think our experiences on this panel are quite diverse as well, right? I think there are some folks who are addressing, volumes in hundreds and thousands. And then there are some folks like GitHub and Coursera who are thinking millions. And so the context is a little different as well. Coming back to my original point, and I think a bunch of us have spoken about this as well, that whether it be hard skills or soft skills, whatever the skills might be, we're definitely seeing that they're changing quite rapidly, and whether they be global, whether they be Indian, those skills are changing for sure. And you look at higher education in India, 40 million students, one would argue maybe 5%, if you're kind, maybe 10% receive high quality education. So faculty development has been a challenge pre-COVID, pre-technology revolution, all of that in any case, right? And post-COVID, post-digitalization of businesses, post everything that we're all talking about, post the need for human skills, faculty development is a bigger challenge per se. Many average universities are currently struggling with cash flows because there is no hostel fees, there is limited tuition fee coming in. And so the amount of money that is actually being spent on faculty development is going down, not going up. So I think faculty development at a countrywide level, if you think in the scales of 38, 40 million students in the country, and assuming a ratio of 1:20, there are probably 2 million faculty members in the country or so. It's a massive, massive challenge. And so, yes, we need to think about this as how will we deliver this in high quality, but also we need to think about how will we deliver this at scale as well. I think that's the challenge at hand.
All right. And what are your thoughts about having, international internships and assignments, which are skirmish, not too long, not too short, but the right amount to get that kind of exposure? Do you think that's a feasibility within the financial model of universities?
I don't really have a point of view on that because I'm not, an expert there. But one thing I can share from a Coursera perspective is we've seen over the last 1 year or so, given everybody's been working from home and there's not been the possibility of in-person internships, we launched guided projects on Coursera, where actually you can come and do something online, right? So if you're learning to become a data analyst in your first job, you can actually come and do a project on Coursera. And so there are about 2,000 projects on the Coursera platform, and we've seen massive uptake from students actually in colleges, in universities. So I'm sure international internships have a big role to play, and maybe some of the panelists might have a view on that. But at least from a Coursera context, on where online has a big role to play when it comes to internships, we've seen guided projects where students have come in and said, look, let me build something online as long as it is on a digital kind of a background. I think that's been quite significant in the last 1 year.
I think that's a great move and very beneficial for students. Dr. Akhil, what are your thoughts on the same?
On faculty and students, right? Okay, so let's talk about faculty. And again, it's no fun if there's no controversy on the panel. So let's talk about us as leaders of institutions. How much time are we willing to give our faculty to develop themselves? Because all the time we keep on saying, how many hours are you teaching? This got this class, this class, this class. And if they say we want to do a research project, we say, think about it, let's just do enough so that they can publish.
Yeah, you should just do this.
But if a faculty comes to you and says, oh, I want to take a course on this online platform to develop my leadership skills and things like that, you'll say, okay, do it on your own time. We're not going to do it ourselves. So firstly, if you really want to develop your own faculty, understand that you need to facilitate that. So it's not just enough to say, okay, go and access courses. Make sure they have the time. Make sure so if you look at, let's say, the corporate training market, right? So for example, you say that most CEOs realize that, okay, like their people are critical to the growth of the organization, right? So therefore they say if they actually allocate time where corporate training happens, they connect them to courses like Coursera and things like that, but they make sure that there is a space to do it. Right. I don't see any reason why us as leaders of institutions can't do that for our faculty. Say, look, we realize that you need to develop to allow you to be better at not just teaching, but also researching. So why don't we actually give them resources and the time away from teaching to do that, number one. Number two, even then, when I know that we do all these faculty exchange programs, which is fun, what stops us from doing joint research with international faculty? And again, it doesn't have to be the big shot universities. What stops you from interacting with, let's say, a smaller university in Nairobi, or let's say in Xinhua, where you say, look, let's actually do a joint research project. Because then what happens is that they actually would be happy to interact with people in India. And it's not that, and all due respect to a lot of the international institutions, it's not that, okay, you as the foreign institution know all the stuff and we are here to learn from you. No. Right. If we actually are interacting in a true collaborative manner, what stops us from interacting with institutions which, I wouldn't use the word ego, but who are willing to talk to us on a one-to-one basis, say, look, you have something to contribute and we as institutions in India have something to contribute. So allow joint faculty research programs where you have small institutions in, let's say, non-Anglo countries that might allow us to actually get a real deep insight there.
I think those are real practical and feasible points. Moving on to Alessandro, what are your points on this?
Yes, I always come after Akhil, so I sound like I'm repeating his thoughts. But yes, I do share a lot of his thoughts on faculty and some other thoughts that I heard before. We still have at the India campus 85% faculty coming from our main campus. Having said that, they are all full-time faculty, but they are from the ones that come to Mumbai. They are from 12 different countries. So even there is a big diversity, because what I said before about students, it applies also to faculty, different way of teaching, of approaching problems, and so on. In terms of training, a very good PhD school is something that is really badly needed in India. And I've been pushing Bocconi to do that for the last 10 years. Still not happening, but I think that's something that is badly needed. Because I think that faculty has to be taught, let's say, on 3 different levels. One is for sure the PhD school. So the way they teach, the way they are trained to teach, whether it is offline or online, which is very different. Then faculty has to go very deeply into research I agree. And that's why we're #1 in Europe for research. And I think that's a big strength that you see in the faculty, in the depth of what they do, what they teach, that then is transferred to the students. And then the other very important part is the corporate connect also of the faculty. So that's why we chose Mumbai. And I understand in a minor city it's more of a challenge, but there are corporates everywhere. Okay,
Right.
and academia and corporate can help each other to grow in a very consistent way.
Sure.
So the interaction with the corporate world, both, all our faculty, they're all working faculty. They are
Right.
either entrepreneur, top executive, consultant, and so on. But also in research, we do joint research with the corporates, and in executive education. Executive education, you interact with the corporate, you understand the problems of the corporate, you understand what the corporate is looking for when they hire students, and what are the gaps in the students. So
I
that's
think
extremely important for us.
Yeah, I think these points are very, very important. In a nutshell, Dheeraj, what do you think about it? And I think Ashu, you can take it over from there. Yep.
Yeah, I think all the key points have been covered. My quick summary of this one would be that we have launched, not as GitHub, many other organizations have launched various programs for faculty, which could be either for skill building or even for community building, where faculties can come together and learn from each other. And we have seen that if we compare those intake of those initiatives versus student, the faculty initiatives have a fraction of attention and interest in such initiatives. Now, our analysis has been that faculty development programs are usually successful when it is pushed from the policymakers. If AICTE is pushing that, yes, this faculty development program has to happen, it will happen, and probably it's going to be a tick mark. So I would say that, the more bigger role here is for the policymakers, that how do we really enable a very, very global and a more, a great faculty development program. And the policies have to be such, that's how this will get enabled. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very tough.
Okay, thank you.
I think Dheeraj, you've highlighted a very, very important, important aspect, right? And that is around incentivization for institutions, who want to undertake such exercises and such collaborations and so on and so forth, right? Atul, I'm going to come to you on that particular question, right? Which is, we've spoken about internships, right? And I think you rightly kind of in your the first answer that you sort of the narrative that you had
you had highlighted, how difficult it is, right, for say, students in India to sort of say gel into an international setting, and and they kind of struggle because of certain issues, right? And there is a completely new model that needs to sort of be established, right? What are your thoughts in terms of, say, having a collaborative research and development environment, and how can it be incentivized, in the longer term? What are your thoughts about that?
You've asked the right question to the right person, Ashu, and I'll just pick it up from Akhil and Alessandro left. So first, I would like to say, and this is for everyone in the audience, the role of a faculty in a university is not just teaching. Unless you're not becoming a knowledge creator, you're just then a teacher or a college, right? A university faculty member has to create knowledge. For example, one of the things which I'm really pushing, Raghav, as we build a partnership, is to say that Shulini faculty have to become contributors to Coursera over a period of time. Otherwise, we're just consumers. So research and innovation along multiple dimensions has to happen. Now, Akhil brought in a point which I completely disagree with, Akhil, and I'm going to prove that to you. Akhil said tie up with institutions which are not that important, tie up with a college in Nairobi. Akhil, you have to slightly change the way you think, and I'll share exactly the way Shulini does research, and I'll share some numbers over here before that. Today, as we look at citational research or academic research, the way academicians measure research, our field-weighted citation index at Shulini compares with Stanford and Oxford. So our field-weighted citation index is 2.2 compared to an IIT, which is 1.1, which is double that of at typical Indian institutions. We are number 2 in the country on citations. In QS rankings, we were number 1 on citations in the recent QS Asia rankings and 14th in Asia. So what do? It's actually not very magical. It's actually very simple, something that the IT industry has been doing for ages. So let's look at the value chain of research. What happens when you do research? The first part of research is hypothesis setting. You set up a hypothesis. Second set is you, based on the hypothesis, set up an experiment. You design the experiment, you conduct the experiment, you collect data, and based on that data, you analyze, and then you write your research paper. That's the value chain of any research that happens anywhere in the world in any subject. Unfortunately or fortunately, the most expensive part of this value chain is actually the experiment that you do. And unfortunately, in India, we don't have that much money to do the experiment, Ashu. But that's the most experiment thing. Do I have the electron microscope, for example, or do I have the HPLC if I have to do something in the pharma side that I don't have? What do we do at Shulini? My researchers do the most critical part, which is the thinking side, developing the hypothesis. They collaborate with researchers at Stanford, for example, who do the experiment. And then they do the analysis together. The point I'm trying to make is that break the value chain of research, collaborate aggressively. 80% of research publications today that are happening at Shulini are happening with international research collaborations. 80%. And it's, I think, a mindset of the institution to push it. My best researchers are not the guys that we got trained from NIH, USA, or Harvard, or MIT. My number one researcher is a PhD from Shulini. He recently became a top 1% researcher of the world. This is given by Clarivate. It's a huge achievement. There are only 20 of them in India. And how does Gaurav do it? A, he's motivated. He's not motivated with money. He's motivated with the freedom of doing research. And I think Akhil brought that point up. Give your faculty the independence to go out and do the research they seek, of course, with some direction. Give them time to do that. And if you're able to do that, you'll see phenomenal researchers. 7 researchers from Shulini, Ashu, are in the top 2% researchers of the world in the research published by Stanford University recently. Classical IIT has 10. And we are we're not even a dot compared to an IIT in terms of the funding or whatever. So the point I wanted to make over here is, number one, we as leaders have to acknowledge the importance of research. We have to encourage our faculty to go out and collaborate. No one in the world, and by the way, this collaboration is not institution to institution. Collaboration in research is researcher to researcher. If you do some tie-ups, I tie up with Alessandro, I can tell you it's going to fail. Unless my researcher and his researcher, they look eye to eye. So we have to encourage that, make them travel, make them go to seminars. I think very, very important. Nowadays, it's easier. It can be done over the web. And one last thought. I'm just finishing my appraisals, and I thought, there are some faculty who are teachers and there's some faculty who are researchers. What surprised me, Ashu, was that the guys who are doing great research are also the great teachers, by the way. The guys who are not doing great research are actually not the ones where students tell us they don't know enough or they've got problems in teaching. So bring research into university education and think about scaling it up. I think Raghav made a very important point. It's a scale issue also. So internationalization and globalization has already happened. If 30% of my content is being delivered by Coursera on campus, I think we're already global. Research can be done. I'll take half a minute more. I know you have to tell me. Research can be done. You guys, we have to run the race for global rankings. It is a shame that no Indian university is in the top 200 of the world. And it doesn't happen because we do not want to run the race. And we're all ostriches, including our regulators.
Atul, I think those are some very, very strong points that you've made. I think there's a very, very strong endorsement for Raghav and for the Coursera team for all the good work that they've been doing. I was in a recent conversation, and there was somebody who was talking about Jugaad and how the way we think. I think and like you'd highlighted, right? I think COVID has shaken us up, right? I think no more can we live in an ecosystem where we are looking at tangential arrangements, right? I think we need to cultivate deep thinking, and that has to be incentivized. Collaboration in international environment is very, very important. Gentlemen, last quick comments. Akhil, I know you've been wanting to come. I'll start with you. But last, a couple of points on creating a global environment or building, a possibility of exporting talent which caters to the world, right? Quick comments on that one.
Creating global environment is, I think basically what we should do, and I think it sort of leads on to Atul's point, is that let's get out of the way, in the sense that as school leaders, let's not try to structure the environment to say, okay, look, this is what we will do, this is what we have.
Sure.
Ideally, I would say is that our job is just to give them access to resources, say, go out, have fun.
Right.
Because the thing is that, trust me, there's a lot of innovation, a lot of stuff that's happening ground up that we as top-down control freaks are not able to develop. So I would say really just give the students and the faculty the time and just give them the one word instruction: go out and develop a global mindset. Here are the resources, have fun. That's it. It's not too
very
difficult.
Dheeraj, I'll come to you.
I think my summary would be that today India is the IT capital of the world. We are successful because our software guys collaborate very well. They create the code and they collaborate, and 80% of software is open source collaborated software today.
Right.
They build great softwares, but when it comes to consumer understanding, for example, if they are building a software for an American supermarket chain, they don't understand the buying behavior. This is what we need to teach. We have those skills, but we have some of the cultural aspects which are missing. Now, talking about scale, it has to be a model which is self-serve model. That's what we need to find.
Interesting. Raghav, last few words on creating a global operating mindset. I think there's a lot of work that you're already doing at Coursera. You're making a lot of content available.
I would say at a broader level, right? Sure. This is a period of massive change in higher education.
Right.
I don't think any of us will experience this level of change going forward. I think it's about the right mindset to be able to embrace this period of change. We are seeing, some universities who are not being able to embrace change are facing lots of challenges. And there are other institutions who are saying, look, I have 20,000 students on campus. I want another 50,000 students to be off campus.
Sure.
And I think the current period of change is allowing us to dream towards that. So I would largely say, as long as we are thinking about adapting to this period of rapid change, that's the approach I would highlight.
Interesting. Alessandro?
Yes, for once, I don't agree with Akhil. While I agree that we have to supply both faculty and students with a platform where they can do anything that they want. I've seen, especially students in those 2 years that they are with us, there's a 20% that does everything, and the rest, if you don't set targets for all of them, they just sit back and wait for the placement.
Right.
The same applies for faculty. So I think giving a platform extremely global with multiple possibilities, and we really give everything in terms of event organizing, all sorts of things, but at the same time fix clear targets to students and faculty, because you have to push them at the beginning. Then it will go by itself.
Interesting. Dr. Abraham?
Thank you. So, final thoughts here. The way we expose them, which should be physical, so you get an opportunity to study this. So we do 4 things. Culture, so they understand the culture when they're in a new environment. They understand the business practices. They understand the leadership and management practices, and they also understand the economic environment. Now, having said that, during COVID, we had a challenge. Some of the countries where we normally operate had put a stumbling block. So how do we address it? So that's where the reimagination comes. And as we have these online platforms, we created new partners through these platforms so students can actually collaborate on an online platform globally. So we have these partner institutions. Instead of physically going there, they were partnering on projects, on internships, so on and so forth. So the way forward is a change in mindset from policymakers, change in mindset from higher education administrators, change in mindset from students, because we are living in an increasingly globalized world. Parag Khanna says connectography, where the entire world is connected through these digital technologies. And as a result, we need to have the global mindset. I'm very much in favor of our students going global and then coming back to India. Last couple of thoughts, 30 seconds. From the Arvind Subramanians, and the Satya Nadella, who's now become chairman of Microsoft. It's all happened because of that global exposure. Sundar Pichai, the list goes on and on. Indra Nui, I can go on. That's one. So how did they manage doing that? They managed doing it because they're coming out of the comfort zone, going outside, exploring, asking the right questions, and getting the global mindset. I want to end on a lighter note. A few years back, a very interesting initiative was started by ITC called eChoupal. Now, before eChoupal, we all know the kind of racket that middlemen were doing. And when it was started, there was a lot of skepticism. They said, how are these farmers, from rural areas, how are they going to, get this done? But within a few, days, they were able to master it. And Indian cotton farmers were monitoring the London Commodity Exchange and the Chicago Commodity Exchange. I think there's a big lesson in that for us, that most of our esteemed panelists said, create the environment, create the opportunity, and I'm sure our Indians will be able to rock the world. Thank you.
Awesome. Atul, I'm going to come to you. Last comments.
Thank you, Ashu. I'm going to add up through what Abraham said. I think we live in a highly globalized and disruptive world. Sure. At one level, there's a huge challenge. And the challenge is we can be consumed by Raghav and Coursera. What I mean by that is my student today can go to any university of the world. He can consume content from anywhere, from Harvard to Stanford to wherever. So that's one problem that we all have to understand. The competition is not with Indian players or localized players anymore, but with the global players. So they could be the East India companies of the past, right? They could just finish Indian university system. Sorry, Raghav, that's what I believe. So we have to step up. The second opportunity is disruptive. We also live in a disruptive world. Right. I think it's an opportunity for us to create the next Harvard or the next Oxford or whatever you want to create, to build the #1 university of the world. And that's what I believe. It can be done in 10 years because the world has disrupted. And I always tell my faculty and everyone, if if Google and Facebook could kick the shit out of IBM, there's no reason why our universities can't do the same thing, because the future of the university is not a big fat university. It's going to be hub and spoke. It's going to use a lot of technology. So let's tie up with all the global players everywhere. Learn. Indian universities have to learn, step up, and then create their presence in the world. That's my thought.
Gentlemen, an absolutely smashing panel. Thank you very much. I couldn't have expected a better discussion. It was phenomenal. I think the thoughts, the nuances that were discussed, bring out a very, very different version of, of when we imagine India at a global, as part of a global play. I think there's a lot more that we require, right? Right from the word go, which is collaboration and research, to thinking, to cultural aspects, to building certain skill level depth. There's so much that we need to do, right? I think we've just sort of started, right? And I think COVID has also offered us a very unique opportunity to really fast track all of this. I think there is a requirement for capital, like Atul highlighted, but I'm sure there is government is thinking about that. They are thinking in all the right directions, and we're going to have some bits and pieces from them soon on that particular bit. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you with us. My team will reach out to you. I would want to capture a lot of this on a separate conversation shortly. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ashar Agarwal. I think this was a fantastic conversation. Moving on to our next panel, panel 3. We're going to be talking about improving the learning curve, creating a data and digital industry ready workforce. Let me introduce the panel to you. Professor Krishna Kant Dave, President, Vice Chancellor, Pacific Academy of Higher Education and Research University. Dr. Kamlesh Misra, Vice Chancellor, Rishi Hood University. Amar Garg, Vice Chancellor at Shobit University. Professor Ramesh Chaudhary, Vice Chancellor, Venkateshwara Open University. Dr. Srihari Prakash Honwad, President, Vice Chancellor at Sri Padampat Singhania University. Abhay Kumar, Vice Chancellor, Pratap University. Amit Saxena, Vice President, Education at Sparsh Group. Dr. B. Senthil Kumar, Dean and Director, Health Sciences, Vinayaka Commissions Research Foundation, deemed to be University, Salem. I welcome all the panelists. The moderator for the session will be Piyush Javeria, Director, Faculty of Engineering, Pacific University, and Ashu Agarwal, India Advisor, Asiatech Journal. Welcome, everybody. Over to you, Piyush.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have all of you with us. I'll have Piyush, my colleague and co-host for the session, to start. Before we dive into the questions, it'll be nice if you could introduce yourselves to us. And we start with Professor Dave.
Yeah, I am Dr. Krishnakant Dave, President, Vice Chancellor in the Pacific Academy of Higher Education Research University. Our university, we have established in 1997 as a group of Pacific. We started with a very small number of students, and now you can see that Pacific University itself has grown up, and we have 10,000 number of students today in this university. Apart from this, we in the group, if we talk about Pacific Group, we have 3 medical university in nearby area and running successfully. This is somehow a little bit about us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Dr. Mishra? So your mic is on a mute.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Kamlesh Mishra. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Rishihood University. Rishihood University is in Sonipat. It's a new university that is being built, and it's going to be a little different. So when we get a chance, we'll talk about it.
Mr. Mishra, thank you so much. Manish just mentioned you joined us from the US. It's a very late hour there. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles. It's 1 o'clock in the night.
And my sincere apologies for the delay that has happened. My sincere apologies on that one.
No problem.
Can we have Mr. Honmar? Sir, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Srihari Honwad. I am leading Sir Padampat Singhania University. We are placed in Udaipur, Rajasthan. We are about a decade-old university, mainly focused on engineering and management programs. Within that, engineering obviously is a very strong elder brother. We have niche programs which are, for example, we have a program on railway engineering. We have a program like most people in computer science engineering on AI, ML, and cloud computing, and data sciences, etc. Even our BBA and MBA programs have these components of IT and data included in them. It's wonderful to be part of this panel, meeting Dr. Mishra after substantial time. Very nice to hear you, sir, and others also. It's a privilege to be a part of this.
It's a privilege for us to have you, sir. Dr. Abhay Kumar, sir, if you could quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashu. I am Abhay Kumar. I am the Vice Chancellor of Pratap University, Jaipur, Rajasthan. In fact, this is a group which had commenced its journey in academics long back from Kanpur, having some engineering colleges, dental colleges and all. This university started its journey in the year 2011, Pratap University at Jaipur. Else, we have one institute in Lucknow also, and a medical college in Bhopal. So and some schools also in Delhi and Kanpur and Lucknow. In fact, this group has been in the education sector since long, and we have a good number of say students from abroad studying with us, especially from the African countries and Middle East.
Wonderful.
So we are doing our best, and I'm very thankful to say Mr. Manish, yourself, Mr. Ashu, Dr. Kamlesh Mishra sir is there, and Mr. Dave also I have met, sir, Dr. Sri Hari, and all the eminent panelists who are here. It is my privilege to be on this platform. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Mr. Saxena, Amitji, if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ashuji. It was, it's a privilege to be here, and good afternoon to everyone or co-panelists. My name is Amit, and I've been into education from last almost 28 years. Currently with the Sparsh Group, which is hardcore corporate entity, felt the need that we need to be in education to bring some changes. So therefore, we are like Abhayji had just said that they're into higher education and school education as well. Similarly, like we are in higher education as well as the school.
Amitji, we lost you in the middle.
Sorry.
No, you're back. You're back. Please go ahead.
Okay. So and we have neighbors to Kamlesh Mishra ji's university, which is in Sonipat. We have a school, Swanpas Public School, which is just across the road. So so yes, trying to do our bit in terms of to bring the changes in both higher education as well as the school education. Look forward for a wonderful session and many more ideas to be discussed. Thank you.
Super, super. Dr. Senthil Kumar. Dr. Kumar, your mic is in a yes, if you could speak it. Yeah.
Dr. Senthil Kumar, I'm a Dean and Director of Health Sciences, Vinayaga Mission Research Foundation, deemed to be university. And currently, I've been associated with this Vinayaga Mission Research Foundation for the past 17 years. And we run, basically we are a health sciences university for the running 3 medical colleges and 2 engineering colleges, nearly 23 institutions across South India. So nice to see you, all the people here, all eminent persons here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to have you, sir. Good to have you. And my co-host for the session is Piyush Javeria. He's a director for Faculty of Engineering at Pacific University, Udaipur. Piyush, a quick round of introduction, and why don't you lead this panel for us?
Thank you, Ashu. And it was, I'm Piyush Javeria. Currently, I'm the Director of Faculty of Engineering at Pacific University. And I've been listening to these sessions since morning. And Ashu, I wanted to say here, these have been like really smashing sessions that you've been like hosting. And there's a lot of sense that is coming out from these sessions. So not wasting much of your time, as we are already running late. So I'll start off with, as you know, the traditional classroom education will not suffice the need for students. How will institutions re-strategize their pedagogy to stay updated on latest developments across artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, robotics, and other industry-specific skills? So how about Dr. Kamlesh Mishra to start off?
Yeah, Piyush, thank you. I think I want to step back a little bit before I go to the artificial intelligence. Let me go to the real one first, and then I'll come to that. I think the most important thing that we need to do is to rethink how learning takes place, sure, and how educational institutions need to evolve themselves into something different. Now, what I mean by that is that, for example, Rishi Hood University is a new university. We're building a new university from scratch. Right? It's a greenfield project. And one of the questions that I asked all my faculty members is, tell me, why do we need a classroom? Why do I need to have a classroom with 60 seats and a faculty table and a chair? What is the purpose of it? Now, obviously, that took everybody into a thinking mode. And today, if you see, in a space of 400,000 square foot of academic area, there are only 3 classrooms of the traditional types. So the typical classroom can be a classroom where there are only bean bags. There are no chairs. And students are sitting on the bean bags in a very, very relaxed environment. So the first idea is that you need to rethink how we want to teach. And do we want to teach? And my feeling is that there is no need to teach students anymore. And this whole concept of teaching has to take a backseat. We cannot teach anyone anything in this current age. Everything is available. As a faculty member, tell me one lecture that you have given that is not available on Google search. You want to go and deliver a lecture on introduction to marketing? You come with me, I will give you at least 250 videos on introduction to marketing, which a student can go and see. So the question that we need to ask is that, does the role of the faculty themselves also change? Right? So artificial intelligence is not going to change if we are going to stay in the same bottle, right? First, we need to get out of it before we start thinking about the artificial intelligence. Let's get real first, right? We need to become different kind of teachers. And every space on the campus is a learning space. So my classes can happen under a tree. They can happen on the corridor, they can happen on the lawns. There is no physical boundary that defines a classroom for me. But let me tell you, it's not easy. It's very, these days I don't go on Zoom, any of the meetings. This is something that Manish requested, so I came. The reason for that is that we have talked everything. In the last 1 year, 1.5 years, I think we have talked everything under the sun about higher education and school education. And let me tell you, nothing will happen, the same thing will continue. Because we are so amazingly good at talking, right? But our implementation is so poor, so bad, right? And we will not be able to. Because university leadership lacks the power to do it. Let's put it very, very clearly. They lack the power. Not that they don't want to do it, right? But they cannot do it. Great institutions can be built only if you have a long-term vision and you're willing to sacrifice your present for that reason. Otherwise, it's not going to be possible. Our scope and our approach to building higher education is very, very short. I've invested 100 crores. From next year, I need to start getting students and start getting my return. That's not how universities are built, unfortunately. It doesn't happen. It's a good business model, right? But business model for education is not that way. First 6-7 years, don't even think about getting anything. You make an investment. Education is an investment that you make and you reap the benefits over a period of time. So change the whole concept of a university itself. Change the ways faculty members are. And then you bring artificial intelligence, you bring technology. I'm the first person to say that you cannot run away from technology. You will not be able to run away. You will have to do it. Otherwise, it will be thrust upon you and you will have to do it. Right? But there are certain prerequisites that are required for us to bring about the change. And once that change begins to happen, then technology will come. Technology will always be an enabler. It cannot replace the teacher. You know, we are talking about all sorts of blended learning and everything. Just wait till all this is over and you will see where we are going. We are going to be in the same place where we started, right? And that's the reality. Yes, there will be an increase in learning through IT. I'm not doubting that, but that's a different market. Don't expect the 18 and 22-year-old kids to sit in front of a computer and go through a degree program. It's not going to happen. It's a fool's paradise we are talking about. Yes, but the market for online learning will increase tremendously. But that's a different market altogether. That's my take.
I think, Dr. Mishra, I think you're talking about a very, very fundamental point, right? I think, you know, I think what you're highlighting is that it's very important to have the right intent. You know, everything else is an instrument, right? It's a tool which will, I mean, you can only use a good tool if you have the right intent, right? And that's when you learn and, you know, you unlearn and
absolutely
kind of engage in the process, right? That's
Ashu, just to help you on this. In the last panel, there was a discussion about faculty development, and faculty doesn't do research, faculty doesn't do that. I have a very fundamental question. Why did you hire them? Who put the gun on your head to hire those people, right? Right?
That's a
because
policy.
The problem is that we looked at that CV. We are appointing this guy for a post of professor. He has 4 publications in 23 years, and you want this guy to be a researcher. You knew it on day one that this is not going to happen, right? But why did you hire? What is the problem with that kind of system? The problem is that we don't understand that a CV today hides more than it reveals. And unless you have the eye for that, you are hiring researcher for a post of professor. The guy in 20 years should be having 40 publications, 50 publications, right? He has 4 publications, and you want him to become an excellent researcher and take you to the next level of achievement. It's not going to happen.
But sir, that is something that, see, when you have a country at large, our problem is that of too many, right? There's a very different problem that we're tackling. I think, we've honestly, I think our, we were still a developing economy, kind of saved us from what had happened in COVID, right? But I think one stark reality that has come in front of us is that, unless you educate people with at least basic stuff, you'll not be able to save, right? And in that capacity or that role, it becomes important that you have basic education getting delivered, right? Which also means that you can get basic, right? So I'm saying what you are talking about is extremely revolutionary, but it needs time, right? It needs a very different kind of an orientation, right? And I think my question in my mind is, do we have the time and the choice? And are we in that position right now when the responsibility is just too large? I think it's a very different kind of a complexity that we're talking about, right? But
I agree. I agree with you, but I just want to end it with this: that if you have a heart problem, you need a surgery.
Sure.
If you are going to take crocin, you will take a long time, and you may not be there.
Unfortunately, it's a heart problem into a few hundred X's, right? We're talking about a very different market, right? But Professor Dave, I'm going to come to you. I understand what Dr. Mishra highlighted. I think it's everybody, all academicians want to get to that point, right? I am sure all of you in your very responsible positions agree with what he's saying, right? But there are immediate priorities that need to be taken, right? Not everybody has the luxury of taking a step back, thinking, this is essentially how we're going to do it, right? There are things that you need to change in the process, right? What are some of those changes, sir? I mean, today, data and digital has become so much more important, right? Even industry, for that matter, is not very sure in terms of how the markets will shape up, right? Trends will only be our guide in the process, right? And that is possible through, of course, understanding data in a better way and understanding digital environment in a better way, right? As an institution, sir, how do you prepare yourself with this change?
See, first of all, I would like to agree with whatever Dr. Kamlesh Mishra is telling. First, we need a lot of investment in our university. See, whatever the technological advancement is required, first we have to invest in technological advancement. Then only we will be able to give whatever the students is demanding. Right. Suppose Dr. Kamlesh Mishra has rightly said that we have to develop faculty first. Okay, if faculty development program are there, then only we can convert or transform the students. Suppose we are living in this tribal belt. No? In this tribal belt, we have to focus on the student who are communicating, their communication skills. We have to improvise. We have to improvise the skills required by the industry, that they should be having leadership quality. They must be involved in the teamwork part. So all kind of industry requirement we can develop, but simultaneously, if the digital can develop them with technological advancement. If both things are there, and in this university particularly, we talk about all private university, huge investment is required for technological updations. And that is, if that is possible, then only we will move further and transform our students to meet out or to match the industry demand.
Wonderful. Dr. Hunwad, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, let me jump to the question initially posed by Piyush. That is the traditional teaching adequate for the new areas, etc.? Let me put the question upside down. Was traditional teaching ever sufficient for preparing in any generation students for tomorrow. Let's look at what is it we are trying to convert. We have faculty members who studied yesterday using textbooks which were the day before yesterday, and we are teaching that stuff to students today, and we expect they will tackle problems which come tomorrow. Is there any way this equation would have ever converged? But I'm sure our faculty were wonderful. Our faculty probably kept in touch with the future. Maybe because the changes that were observed were not as rapid as we are seeing them. So there are some of these external difficulties which probably make this problem glaring. But I think this problem has always been there. We try to tackle it by adding internships, use the practice school BITS Pilani model. We try to tackle it by saying we should have faculty who do research. Essentially, that's one way of looking to day after tomorrow, not just tomorrow. Possibly, and we did all along. I mean, in most universities, we always valued somebody from the industry coming and talking to our students. Did we not? And we said that gives a different flavor altogether. With different kinds of intensities, I'm sure we have brought in the industry directly into academics. For the simple reason, both academics and industry both work on entirely opposing principles. Industry has to protect its knowledge, not let anybody steal it, because that's how they make their profits. And in academics, you want to share as much knowledge as you can get. And this protected knowledge of industry is not easily available in the academics. I think that is the starting point where we will agree that traditional teaching was never adequate. However, there are skills to be built up. There is a certain amount of knowledge which many people call it time invariant. For example, thermodynamics is not going to change drastically in the next, I don't know, I don't want to put 50 years. Some Einstein might come and change the entire thing, but it has not changed in the last 100 years. So I suppose it's one such example where it will not change drastically. So those are things which traditional teaching will remain important because you are looking at a holistic development of a student. Quite often we get blinded by employability of students and we go in for short-term certification, short-term skill development. And these skill developments, let me be very categorical in stating that these have very short shelf life. I mean, something which was the keyword 2 years ago is no longer the keyword today. We are talking entirely differently. However, a self-learner, a lifelong learner, which I mean, you can see in the panel, Dr. Mishra, Dr. Abhay Kumar. I don't think anything that they were taught in the university is really useful in their navigating life today. So these are all examples of lifelong learners. They learned, unlearned, and relearned what they needed to succeed, if I may allow the word, or survive in many cases. And so the question is moot, but I think we are leading somewhere using that question. I'm sure there are other people who also get to speak on this issue and take us closer to a conclusion which we all would like to reach. Thank you.
My colleague Avin has a question. Avin, why don't you go ahead?
Yes. So I think you all have answered this question in various parts, but I would want a more holistic view. So we're always contemplating what is the hybrid model, as Dr. Srihari rightly pointed out. Subjects like heat transfer, thermodynamics, I mean, even medicine per se, it can't be digital because it needs hands-on skill set. It needs a lot of thorough practice. So what do you think are the proportions? I mean, is there some kind of a formula for these proportions? Let's say 70-30, 50-50. I mean, what are we looking at? What is the future of these hybrid programs be like? What do you think the future will be?
You know, I think I would not want to get into that kind of a system where somebody defines for me as to what percentage should be online and what percentage I should be teaching. What we are doing at the university is we are giving that freedom to the faculty members. And what we are telling them is that you decide what part of your course you can actually do online and what you cannot do.
Okay.
And you start with 15%.
Right.
And we build on that.
Oh, did the connection freeze?
I think we are experiencing some
Dr. Abhay Kumar, if you could answer that. Avin had a very, very relevant question. Amit ji, we'll just come to you. I think your role is very important as industry. But I'll have Dr. Abhay Kumar to answer this, and then we'll come to Dr. Mishra. We'll just come back to you after your video is chosen. We'll just come back to you.
Well, thank you, Ashu, and thank you, Avin. In fact, there are certain things which have touched my nerve. I'm very listening to Dr. Kamlesh Mishra ji, who happens to be from the same university where I am, but he is my mentor. And that much I can say that he has always been a guide to me. So taking a leaf from what he has said, I must say that there are two aspects which you have touched. One is what should be the percentage of blend, but before that he talked about traditional teaching.
Right.
Now, what traditional teaching are you talking about? This is my question. Is it the traditional teaching of the British Raj? Or our traditions go back more than 2000 years back? Which traditional teaching are we thinking of and discussing about? Is it the British rule which gave us a teaching pedagogy and methodology by which we were supposed not to produce thinkers but just followers and clerks?
Absolutely.
Very bluntly. Or is it the traditional teaching of the Guru Shishya Parampara, in which every student was handheld, whether it was per se face-to-face teaching or whether it was a practical or innovative teaching. Now that practical and innovative teaching now comes through gadgets.
Right.
Maybe not through teachers directly. Why? When we see that the obvious consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic naturally has been the infusion of data-enabled services into every aspect of our lives. This we have seen in the past 1 year. Even people of my age who were not that tech savvy have become now. Maybe after some of the webinars which you have held, I think we have had to become tech savvy, and so have the students become through online teaching. Even those in the remote areas know how to handle things well. Absolutely. And handle apps and other gadgets better than us.
Yes.
So we expect a digital transformation to be even become a greater imperative for organizations, whether it's the education sector or whether they are in the corporate sector in the future. Now, as Mishra ji said, as Professor Dr. Shri Hari has said, contrary to popular belief, digital transformation is less about technology and more about people. Now, you can pretty much buy any technology you want to, but your ability to adapt to an even more digital future depends on developing the next generation of skills first.
Absolutely.
Then closing the gap between the talent supply and demand, and future-proofing your own and others' potential. Now, there are so many things, but the most important part would be to have a mindset.
Right.
We still don't have that mindset, in my opinion. What happened was, when the pandemic came into fore, we all jumped online, whether it was uploading on email, sending emails, having WhatsApp groups, chat bots, whatnot. LMS platforms came later on. Many ERP platforms were set up. So what happened was, even the best of professors, I say they were feeling a difficult proposition to teach online. The lesson plan had to be changed. The same lessons plans could not go online as it was held in a person-to-person teaching. So what happened? That young tech-savvy faculty had to come together with the old people and they help each other. That means that one word collaboration again comes into fore. When I was listening to, say, when I was on the platform, say earlier, when another panel was in session, I beg to differ that somebody said that all researchers are very good teachers. I beg to differ, sir. You know, research has a different mindset, whereas the teaching has a different mindset. Even the new national education policy has talked about research-driven universities and teaching-intensive universities. Why has it done so? If every good researcher could be a good teacher, then I think every teacher should in corollary be a good researcher. It is not that.
It is not that.
So we have to understand that, of course, as the pedagogy goes, we have to change ourselves. The reskilling part of the faculty has to be done. It is not only the reskilling part. I must tell you, as Dr. Mishra ji had said earlier, and I fully agree with him, that when you are appointing someone, you have to be very careful to read between the lines. Because, you know, we recently, what we are doing is in every university, we are having an online interview of say 5 to 10 to 15 minutes time, shortlisting people, calling them, seeing their CV and appointing them. Now, is that what would help us in getting our pedagogy in position? Is that what is going to help us in having a blended learning methodology? What sort of blended learning, I'm asking you? You know, tech is here to stay. Technology is here to stay, I know. Now, what should be the hiring practices be? It should need to evolve to fill the big gap between skilled talent demand and supply with the right talent acquisition strategies. So followed by vigorous training programs.
So we'll just I mean, I think a lot of points that you've highlighted make a lot of sense, and I completely agree with a lot of stuff that you said. And I think what you're essentially doing is you're re-highlighting what Dr. Mishra has already highlighted, right? That it's about the mindset, right? If you have to do anything, it's about getting an inquisitive mindset. And I think there is a lot of work that has to happen there, right? But so I'm just going to go to Amit ji. He's been waiting very, very patiently. You know, Amit ji, you represent the industry, right? And you've been in the education fraternity, right? You understand that cross section, right? And for us to have you, you know, give your comments, because you know these are very uncharted territory for the industry as well, right? And the need for the student of, for example, today or say beyond COVID, to understand data and digital better, right? How has that grown in the last say 1.5 years? What are your thoughts about it?
So let me give you a perspective. Sure. Whatever the education we are providing at a university level or a higher education institution level, sure, the product which is going out in the market, as per NASSCOM, says 72% is trash. As per the industry stalwarts, people like Narayan Murthy ji had said 95% is the trash. So I think we need to, we as a corporate, when we got into education and we've been into the education for a long time, we have realized the gaps which are there and how we at our level can fulfill it. And I think we need to stop the compartmentalizing of the education, that is higher education or universities or the school education. I personally believe that the fundamentals of education will start from school level, because you have 14 or 15 years time to groom a child. Unlike a higher education institutions, as one of the co-panelists was just saying that, you have to work a lot on the personality development, the communication skills and things like that. And by the time you're developing these skills, he's in second year and third year and fourth year. And, by the time another set of technology which is coming in. Okay. So personally, I believe that, whether new education policy or whether any other board, the grooming ground of every student has to start from the school, full stop. And these are the 14 years which we have to give them, develop the scientific temperament and prepare them for the future. So by the time they get into, their higher education streams, they are well prepared, well conditioned.
Right. Amit ji, I think we lost
teachers and technologies completely diagonally opposite to each other. Right. I mean, 10 years back, 15 years back, we had the smart boards. Everybody thought the pedagogy is going to change. Where are they? Nothing. They just become a marketing tool. Of course, COVID has brought them little together. teachers are far more comfortable with handling, but this is very, very, very initial stages in terms of getting close to the technology. What we as individually or a schools, group of schools, what we are trying to do, what we have done is actually to set up different kind of a labs altogether. In the sense, we thought, we'll develop the robotics or the 3D printing or the Internet of Things. We started, developing the fab labs, we call it fab labs. But 2017, a very good development has taken place when Niti Aayog says that, to develop the scientific temperament at a school level, we have to have a tinkering labs. So they started giving up grants. And our group of schools were the first 500 schools of the country which got the grant from the government to set up those schools. So if you have to develop the curiosity, if you have to develop the creativity or the imaginations, these are the skill set which are required. Very interestingly, I think a couple of weeks before only, CBSE has now said that data sciences and the machine learning can be introduced from class 6th onwards. Point is not about the introduction. Point is about who are the resource persons, how we are going to train them. Are they capable enough to undergo this kind of a training? Because they have been trained in 20, 30 years, 40 years back. So when we have to talk about design thinking, computational thinking, or physical accounting, these are the things which are very important at the school level. I repeat, by the time the student pass out from the school, from class 12th, and when they graduate to a university level, they are getting a product which is far more prepared to take on the new technologies and everything. So from class 1st onwards, we have introduced coding, which has STEM education, which has the culmination of many, the newer technology which is coming in place. So I really hope, school will play a much more constructive role to give a much more finished product to the higher education.
I think Amitji, the question, sorry, the kind of, what the perspective that you've given is essentially what, Dr. Mishra was talking about, right? That, he's trying to bring a very different kind of focus and narrative when it comes to higher education, right? You have to reimagine the model, and that can only happen when you change it at a school level, right? Unless you do that, by the time they get to the university, the expectation will be very different, right? So I think that's incredible. What you highlighted is very amazing. My next question to this panel is that, we've spoken about macros, right? In terms of, the pedagogy and, and the faculty development, we've talked about all of those things, right? At a more structural level, at a decision makers level, how is academia preparing for very specific emerging areas, right? For example, there is e-commerce, there is financial technologies that is coming up, there's health tech which is coming up, agri-tech, there's a lot of work happening, right? So essentially what is happening is that now that digitization is becoming a very significant part of every industry, there are very new opportunities, massively new opportunities that are emerging, right? That are not necessarily part of the current curriculums that we have or the processes that we follow, right? What are some of the steps that you are taking to sort of ensure that the student is prepared for all of these changes and gets absorbed in the industry, right? So I'll come to you, Dr. Mishra, and then I'll come to all the academicians on the panel. Dr. Mishra, if you could give us a sense, that'd be nice. And I understand, you have a fundamental opinion, but I think that is a discussion that of course requires a lot of deep thinking. But I think we have a task at hand as a country. We have a task at hand, right? I think unemployment numbers.
Sure. I think there are two aspects that I would like to mention here. One is that it's going to be very difficult for anybody to imagine the types of jobs that will exist 20 years from today.
Sure.
Whether it is industry or it is educational institutions, everybody will shoot the arrows in the dark. It may hit, it may not hit. Right. Now, it becomes very, very difficult to then imagine, how do we train the students? We can train the students only for the next couple of years. We cannot train them from the point of view of 20 years, which means that over a period of time, learning and relearning will have to be a process or a model that needs to be introduced, because the speed at which changes will take place, it will be very difficult for any university or educational institution to be so proactive. Right? Sure. Not because they don't want to be, but because there are regulatory requirements also, right? So digitization is a big thing. But suppose all of a sudden you say, okay, I want to have an MS in digital technology. It'll take you 2 years to get the regulators to agree to it. Because they will say, oh, no, we don't have this in our list. So you have to first work to get that in the list.
But doesn't that make your job very, very complicated? I mean, you don't have that kind of time. I mean, your student is ready to enter the industry right now.
And that's what creates the problem. The second issue, so one is the updating the curriculum itself. And the second is the adaptation of the technologies that are going to be there. Now, I'm not against adaptation of technology, and I don't want you to get that impression.
Sure.
But I'm also of the view that all technologies that are being pushed by the industry are not necessary for educational institutions. They have their own business models, they have their own business agendas, they're finding gaps somewhere, and some of these gaps should not be filled by educational institutions. So as an educational institution, I decide what technologies I want to have, right? Okay, so somebody is trying to sell me learning management system. I used learning management system 20 years back in India itself. I've been using, because I was using, I was trying to develop the Sakai platform, which is a learning management system.
So, Dr. Mishra, I have a slightly different question, right? My question is more industry focused, right? I'm not talking about players trying to digitize your campus. What I'm talking about is, the requirement of the industry. For example, so institutions were calibrated to train kids for banking, for example, right? Now today, fintech is taking over, right? The new jobs that are going to come in are going to come in fintech, right? Credit structures, for example, was one piece of it, right? Today, credit rating has taken a completely different shape, right? So I'm saying industry is changing, right? The facade of the industry is changing. The requirement of the industry is changing, and that's essentially where I'm coming from, right? What are some of the
I agree. You see, like if you look at the United States today, right? There are tech companies, let's say like Snapchat or even Microsoft. Can you believe that there is a person with a music major who is also working there, or a philosophy major who is working there, right? He has no idea he has not done his engineering, right? But he has gone through a certification course which teaches them how to do coding.
Right.
That's what they need, right?
Sure.
So I think it is good to have association and relationship with the industry, and it's long waited also in India that industry should move forward to come and work with the educational institution. So that will help us in trying to train students for the future jobs that the industry may have. But we also have to be understanding that maybe the industry also doesn't know what the future of jobs is going to be, right? In most countries, the future, what the industry does is determined by educational institutions. It is their research that shows what industry should be doing. It is just unfortunate that we are the only country where the industry tells us कि आपको कैसे पढ़ाना है, बाकी छोड़ दो.
No, I think interesting. So I think interesting. I think I've both, time and again, I think you're highlighting some very, very fundamental points. Dr. Honwan, I'll come to you, right? What are some of the specific things that you're doing, for example, to ensuring that your students are prepared for the jobs that are available in e-commerce, the new emerging areas of fintech, agri-tech, all of that? What are some of the things that you're doing as an institute?
I'll take from where Dr. Mishra ended. In India, industry leads what universities need to do, and although we all academicians take it with a pinch of salt, sometimes a bucket full of salt, while we are with Dr. Mishra in saying,
can I just add to that? I think it's not even the industry; it's the consumer, really. Right? Yeah. I think consumer decides. I think industry just reacts, and I think education institutions are the arm supplier, not in a bad way, but I'm saying they're the ones who are feeding to that consumption, right?
Yes. See, the only way it can happen in an institutionalized way is to bring in industry representation into your academic council, board of studies, where they will be able to interact with your faculty. They'll be able to tell your faculty that, look, your ivory towers are breaking down, what you're teaching is probably not relevant. You probably need to leave out some of these things and add some of these things. And the industry may then even offer experts from amongst themselves who can come and help you out. I think that's an institutionalized way of doing it.
Right.
Then, of course, there are a number of ways in which you can, you do a stitch in time. Suddenly, your batch has come to the final year, and you realize you have not taught them something. Then you pull out somebody who can come and do a workshop, who can do a certification course, or you encourage your entire batch to go and do a certification course, which the industry is accepting. Maybe NASCOM approved certification course or some such thing, which all industry is looking at. You get a feedback, your placement comes back with a feedback that well, if our students have this certification, their employability improves. Those are all stitches in times, which I'm sure if you're a university, you at least have a little freedom to go ahead and do that.
Correct.
And you also have freedom to incorporate it as part of your coursework in some cases. So that the coursework, which is partly dealt with by faculty member, can lead into can culminate into a certification with an improved probability of certification of students, or etc. etc. These are all things which are happening around us. People are partnering with industries to redefine programs, which we have multiple examples. For example, IBM is trying to partner with a large number of universities. They have their model. Similar models have come up from Xebia. Microsoft also has courses which they're willing to offer. I'm sure universities can take a step forward and bring in some of these industry doyens. For example, L&T, the Tatas, even Reliance, they can be pulled in to bring in a flavor of competency development in the universities. That is one way of handling these things. That's an institutional way of handling these things, and that's going to be a long-lasting way of handling these things. It's going to be a very dynamic partnership, just like between.
I like the way you.
What worked when you got married will not work 2 years after, and surely will not work 20 years later. So
no, I think what you highlighted is so much more important, right? I think those partnerships are very important, but I think what you're still talking about is slightly more horizontal, right? We're not really talking about very specific skill sets, that are for that particular industry, right? And I think all of us know that, and I think like all of us highlighted, right, that I think Dr. Mishra talked about 20 years what we're going to need. I think the markets have changed. We don't have the kind of time that we had early on, right? I think now the market is going to change in 2 years, 3 years, right? Preferences, patterns are going to change. The kind of data and the kind of content that and the influence that consumers have today is going to make it so much more difficult, right? To assess how trends are going to play out, what the requirements are going to be, and upskilling is going to be very important. But I think core skilling is going to be very, very important at an institutional level is what I see, right? So I think horizontals, for example, with say, for example, institutions like NASCOM and, say an IBM certification, all that, I think a lot of that will start to look, I think it'll be more about very specific, core work level expertise is how I see it. But I'll there is very interesting work which is happening at Pacific. Dr. Dave, why don't you tell us a little about that, right? I think, we've had a chance across our interaction with Piyush that he's highlighted, right? Why don't you tell us a little about it, right? What are you doing when it comes to creating some specific, specific courses that are relevant for students in the emerging trends? For example, like e-commerce, fintech, agri-tech, and things like that.
Yes. Now, like we I'm so sorry for my bandwidth is so low. So my video will not be displayed, or somehow I will be not audible to everyone. But I'm audible to everyone. No?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just I would like to add with whatever the Professor Honwar said, that like we have to have some institutional partnership, not with IBM or big players like Microsoft. We may have partnership with the small industries also. In that case, like whatever they are suggesting, suppose I am living in Udaipur, Rajasthan, and there are like micro and small industries where they can hire people or they can hire students. So, like I want to start, as a policymaker, if you ask me, I want to start a partnership with them and ask them to come in the campus and what are their business, how students can learn by surrounding. Like suppose when a student want to start up his business, he can learn from the micro and medium scale industry. So this kind of approach is required when you are in university. So, and you have to learn from industry side, right? What kind of advancement in going in the industry, and how can you adopt in your university? So this will be a very easy approach. We can we can go there and learn out of that by very not so far, by industry we can learn. Suppose we have Hindustan Zinc Limited here, though sometimes they are having their tight schedule. We may ask them to like interact with the students. We may call all industries to campus and train the student that how in what direction they have to think. So in this way, like we inculcate an industrial part in the students. Second part, suppose if you talk about my university, especially a diamond company owner has come to our university day before yesterday. And he told us that, we want to have a collaboration with you. And we will provide all technological support in university. And we will train your student. And then 100% we will hire them. So in this way, like if such kind of collaboration come at our door, they will tell us that such kind of technological advancement are there. And you please train them and we will absorb them. If such kind of situations, like happens, then we will, like the ready force, like immediately manpower can match whatever the industry is demanding. And nowadays, it's very horrible. Only 46% are recruitable students we are providing to industry, and rest, industry is struggling without manpower. So if industry feels that, how can we tell the university that this kind of requirement or this kind of need is required in the students, and you please inculcate them. If we are ready to inculcate, we are ready to give whatever they want, but industry should approach to us and they tell us that this kind of requirement is there.
I think it's a difficult ask, sir. I think industry. I think it has to be very mutual, right? I think it has to be a very different kind of a collaboration. It has to be very, very mutual. Amitji, Dr. Abhay, before I come to you, I'm going to go to Dr. Senthil Kumar. Sir, my sincere apologies. I wanted to include you in the first question. It completely slipped. But your thoughts, sir, on the requirement of creating very specific skill set in the current environment.
Thank you very much. Being a Health Sciences University, I would like to talk about. I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So I would like to talk about the Health Sciences latest streams. Like nowadays, the UGC, University Grants Commission, and NAC criteria, they are mentioned. They are giving a for the points itself, like industry specific courses what we run, industry design courses what we run, industry offered courses what we are running, and industry internship. These 4 criteria where we can score in NAC as well as the UGC is mentioning nowadays. For the past 2 years, we have to show we have to include in our curriculum itself industry offered courses. Industry offered courses mean we have to design a curriculum and the industry will come and take the classes. Industry design is the industry will design a course and we have to incorporate in our curriculum. And industry internship, we have to send the students to the industries. For an example, even healthcare, we have industries like hospitals industries. So we have to send the students to the industry internship. Like that, the UGC as well as NAC has come up with these ideas. And being a Health Sciences University, we have a tie-up with the Siemens. It's kind of skilling and upskilling. Those are already in the field of already completed students, like our alumni, we are making them to be an upskilled one by inviting the Siemens people to take industry design courses. And existing students in different fields, for an example, we have technology students, we are asking the students to get into that. And industry offer, we have for an example, we have optometry program where that the optometry, that you and me are wearing spectacles. Dispensing optics, one of the core subject where the students doesn't know how to, after completion of the program, they don't know how to do the dispensing of optics. So for that, the Lawrence May and Bosch and Lamb, these companies are coming out and saying because they are finding out the industry, academic industry gap. So to fill the gaps, they are coming up with the curriculum where we need to teach them, and once they go out of this our university, probably like they'll be get well placed. So
that is exactly what I was talking about, Dr. Senthilkumar, and I think that is so progressive, right? I think there is a very key need and a critical need for very specific aspects, like you talked about ophthalmology, right? So it's very, very critical that there are specific pieces that are worked on, and I think the student is prepared for that opportunity which will emerge tomorrow, right? So with that, Abhayji, you have had a point to make. If you could very quickly summarize your point around this particular need of trading specific skill sets, please.
Right, Mr. Ashu, there are 3 points I would like to ponder upon. The first point is academia and industry are mutually exclusive. They cannot be thought of as being 2 different entities.
Sure.
Whatever course curriculum we are having, we must have some industry curriculum embedded in it, right, so that the students not only go for a job, we must have to prepare them for a career. There's a big difference. We are not thinking about that in some aspects. What is happening is that when the student goes to an industry, let's start from the school. When a student passes a school, he goes to a college or university, then he goes to the say industry or the corporate world.
Sure.
He has to climb the corporate ladder with a single skill set. This is what our generation has done.
Right.
Now that corporate ladder has become a corporate maze. Because what is happening is those skill sets have to be continually reskilled and upgraded throughout the career of the student. That means industry comprising of the students who are there for next 5 years also have to come back to the university in the times.
Right.
And the university also has to go to the industry. That means we must be mutually exclusive. Let me give an example of research. In India, research is mostly considered as being the addition of DR in front of our name. Let me be very candid. And the research projects being held in the library. What is the purpose of research? The purpose, as we see in European countries and China, is to translate that project into a product or service with the help of the industry.
Right.
Society benefits.
Sure.
So we have to think of industry in a wider perspective, not only for the students who are studying with us, but even after they leave us. So that alumni base should not simply be just to get our students a job in the industry. It should be to help the industry and the academia mutually exclusive.
I think
this inclusivity and exclusivity have to be there. This is
I think Dr. Avegumar, I think what you're highlighting is a very, very pertinent point. It's a very, very pertinent point. And I think it's about building that mindset, right? I think it's also about a lot of innovation, incubation, entrepreneurship thought process that has to be inculcated, right? And that's when you create, I mean, see, unless you have that, the student will never be able to understand how the market thinks, and then what the producer requires, right? And then his or her skill set, right? I think that's an environment that you're talking about, right? I think a very, very pertinent point that you highlighted.
Ashu, just 1 second more.
Oh,
if you
please.
I just want to tell you one thing. We talk about startups, we talk about incubators,
sure.
But we teach finance, accounts, maths, everything in that.
Right.
Now, I remember John Spencer saying sometimes back that not all students are going to become entrepreneurs.
Right.
But every student will have to think like an entrepreneur throughout his career.
Absolutely.
We even should have an intrapreneur within our university system and the industry system.
Correct.
Innovators, thinkers. That is what I was pointing at.
No, absolutely, sir. I completely agree with that. I think, Amitji, that's a very, very significant point that we've come to, right? And essentially something that you highlighted in your last point, which was around creating, having, say, stem cell education, creating the tinkering labs, bringing in that mindset, right? What are your thoughts about it, right? I know that, within schools and within school education with kids, right? I think it's a little too early, right? But as an industry professional, what are your thoughts about it, right? Specific tasks are important. What are your thoughts about it?
So Ashuji, let me just say one thing. Entrepreneurship as a subject has been introduced. Incubation centers are available in the school as well.
Sure.
Number one. And we as a school also offer a seed capital to the students whose project has been selected by the bankers or the panelists out there.
Wonderful.
But what we were discussing so far is about industry connect and how we can make the industry ready. I think we've been doing it. Corporate outreach, industry outreach, center of excellences, tie-ups, summer training, everything is happening.
Sure.
very recently, if you look at HCL as an organization, started picking up the student from class 12 from the schools itself to hire them, train them as per as their own requirements. This is where the stage has come, where they are not really trusting the manpower has been given by the universities or the higher education institution, which fulfill the demand of the industry.
Right.
So hiring a student from class 12 who has scored 80% marks and say, we'll take care of your graduation, come, we'll teach you what we want, what kind of assignment which we have. And then, you know, the long-term perspective they show, give a scholarship to the students. And that is where I think the connect which is also happening between education and the industry is also concerned.
Sure.
So this model is catching up very fast. SCL took a lead a couple of years back. First year itself, they picked up 500 odd students, you know, from Delhi itself.
Right.
Because the workforce is, they need a workforce which is industry ready.
Right.
So there are gaps are there in terms of our approach versus the industry requirement is concerned. We have and you know, maybe the NAC or what kind of a, you know, the parameter has been given with respect to you know, the pointers you know, for ranking and everything. What in a previous panel discussion, what the Mr. Atul Khosla was saying, that, you know, we are too heavy in terms of regulatory cholesterol. We should be able to think more openly, innovatively, and therefore I think we can offer a better solution to the corporate.
Right. Aminji,
sorry.
Please go ahead. No, your screen froze.
All I'm saying that, you know, what happening in the higher education sector also has to bring in at a school level so that the complete package is ready and all the future skills. Of course, technology is here to stand. We have absolutely no control on that. However, we can prepare the mindset, you know, integrate the future skills so that we are willing to change, come out of the comfort zone faster than what it used to be, you know, till about 5, 7, 8 years back. So this is where I think we need to focus a lot, and it has to be a very seamless, you know, relationship between higher education and the school education. We treat school education very differently, but which is not the right thing. I think we wanted to create a hub of learning wherein all good practices can be shared, you know, with the you know, other institutions and bring them together, because collaboration is going to stay here, and anything which is worthwhile, which is good for the industry, which is good for the individual professionals.
Amitji, how I wish I could continue this session. How I wish I could have continued this session. Unfortunately, there's a paucity of time. You know, final closing remarks. I'll go to Dr. Dave first, Professor Dave first. You know, sir, you've been waiting very patiently. Closing remarks for this panel, and I promise you, my team is going to reach out to you. We're going to do a separate one-on-one session. That is, and that's going to be a focused 40-minute session that we're going to do with each of you. Sir, if you can have your closing remarks to start with, and then we'll go to all the other panelists.
Yeah, Mr. Ashu, I have a very simple, say, 4-line closing remark.
Sure, sir.
If we have to sustain ourselves, if we have to be confident in terms of giving our students what we think we should as teachers give them, if we think that we are going to do differently for them than we do for our own biological children, I think we must collaborate. Again, that mindset part comes. Let's come together. It's not saying that only researcher to researcher collaboration should be there. I differ again. I say that we should collaborate on the institutional level.
Sure,
we have strengths. Each organization has a strength of its own. Let's help each other. So come together, and I started doing that in Pratap University.
Wonderful, Abhay sir. That's an encouraging one, and you know, I will talk to you separately. I will go to Professor Dave, sir. Please, your closing remarks.
Yes, I want to add one thing. Collective efforts, rightly, Abhay sir is said, we should have a collective efforts, and then only we will get a result. So there is a requirement of collective efforts. All universities should have a collective efforts, and then, you know, whatever be, like if something technological advancements are there, then like suppose investment problems are there, some universities don't have such kind of you know, like the money. Then, you know, like if there are some people together, like-minded universities are there, they may help the students, and the students may go over there and will get that kind of knowledge from other university also. So, there should be a mutual exchange of, like the knowledge should be there among all. Second part, I would like to add, there are three parts. One is regulator, other one is university, and third one is industry. So like university have to foresee also regulators what are imposing kinds of things to them. So like regulators' role are again important, and they have to understand that whatever recent developments are going on, regulator has to understand, and they have to ask to university to change accordingly, and then university and industry will have collaboration.
Wonderful, wonderful, sir. I will go to Dr. Mishra. Dr. Honrod, I'll just come to you. Dr. Mishra, you've been the most patient, and I'm honestly, I think I can't thank you enough for, I mean, it's 1:30 possibly, right? In US, where you are. So your closing remarks, please.
What I'll suggest is that I think it's time for us to go back to the basics of higher education.
Awesome.
We need to get out of this marketing gimmicks that we always do with everything. We come up with these buzzwords and we just go with it as if the only reason that we survive is to get more and more students.
Right.
I think I like what Abhay said. What is it we do with the students that come? I think it is our absolute responsibility as an educational institution to actually work with them very, very closely.
Right.
And show them the light at the end of the tunnel. But more importantly, also make them believe that it's not a train coming from the other side.
Right.
I think for that, we will have to go to the basics of higher education. It's so easy to do well in higher education because everybody is doing such a bad job.
I think you're being a little brutal, right? I don't.
No. See, the problem is that's the problem in our country. We are not willing to speak because we want everybody to be happy, right? We are a different kind of people. We cannot bring about changes if we do not accept that we have problems. There are no solutions available if we don't accept there are problems.
But I think, sir, I think everybody on this panel, I think everybody kind of agrees with what you're saying. I think everybody understands that there is a challenge.
The regulators hate me. And they always tell me, Dr. Mishra, you ask too many questions. I said, well, that's my birthright. I'm a teacher.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sir, I am gonna go to Dr. Honward. Sir, your closing remarks, please.
I try to make it quick. I try to combine what Dr. Abhay and Dr. Mishra are talking about, and also include what Dr. Dave also added. See, this entire conflict is around two things. One is we seem to have accepted that employability is an outcome of education. Which is all right for an individual who is getting into a higher education system. But we are forgetting that for an institution, the outcome of an education is to create a global citizen. And citizenry is all about the citizen becoming part of the society and putting in all his efforts to help the society. And if there is a citizen who is helping the society, I'm sure employability is just a side product of the whole process. And for that, I'm sure it's said that it takes a village to educate a child. I'm sure it takes a village full of universities to educate a child. Collaboration amongst university, because we got to stick together. There is going to be that competition amongst us, which would not go away just because 5-6 of us are thinking. I'm sure if we are able to come out of those walls and collaborate with the industry, bring in the best foot forward. And none of us are individually equipped to handle all the problems, but I think collectively we will have more than sufficient ammunition to tackle the problems of the kind we are trying to discuss today.
Totally agree.
I leave it at that.
Totally agree. Amitji, if you could give your closing remarks.
So I think all the co-panelists have very beautifully summarized the entire discussion. Be required, and probably we university or educators need a little more freedom to think and work rather than putting a lot of rules and regulations around us, because time has come wherein there has to be freedom of experimentation and work around, so that we can come more closer to the industry, we can come more closer towards the kind of education which we are providing to the future generation, loaded with future skills, so that they can compete, of course, in the global market and a part of the global economy.
Amitji, thank you so much. I will go back to my colleague Piyush. Sorry, I took away all your questions that you had to ask. But Piyush, why don't you you've been a practitioner, you engage with students very closely, you work with them. Why don't you give me your final thoughts for this panel?
I think what the panelists have said, starting from beginning, we need a lot of transformation of mind. At the same time, you need right mindset. As Professor Mishra was talking about, where the classes can have, right? So there's a lot of disruption happening, but we need to go on the right set of things. We can use technology as a tool, right? So when we had a lot of debate about traditional teaching and new methods or new pedagogy, so that's where we are. And I think as somebody rightly said, the goal of education is not to increase the amount of knowledge, but to create the possibilities for a student to invent and discover, to create men who are capable of doing new things. So as you were talking about a lot of startups that are coming up and how we evolve as an ecosystem to accommodate them. And as we know, as moving forward, we need to pick the right set of skills that we need. And as we were talking about, a lot of investment, lot of change in mindset, as we were quite, as Professor Mishra was very bold and brutal about talking about such things and bringing them on clearly to this panel and things. And I appreciate, we need people who can be coming out together and raise right set of problems that we as an educational institutes are facing. Right. So it was good to hear all the eminent panelists. I would like to thank Professor Dave, Professor Mishra, Dr. Abhay Kumar, Dr. Amit, Dr. Honwat, and Ashu, you as well. So it was a bit listening to them, and yes, we take a chance here and be critical, and at the same time try to improve ourselves based on the things the panelists have said.
Thank you, Piyush. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure to have you, knowing you. And I think, one thing which is a common constant is that everybody agrees there's a requirement for change, right? I think we have our different priorities, fortunately, unfortunately. And, I think we need to strategize our game, our work in line with those priorities, right? But I think we are, we have the right people leading our education ecosystem in the country. I am super happy to have spoken with you today. My team will reach out to you. We're going to do one-on-one sessions with each one of you specifically. We believe that there is some very exciting stuff that we can, you have to sort of talk about for us to, kind of capture and, further disseminate. But thank you so much for taking the time out. I would like to invite Avin Chakravarti, co-founder Asia Tech Journal, to come in and do the closing comments.
Thank you, Ashu. I think today's day was phenomenal. The panel did give us the critical talking points in the ecosystem of education today. So I would like to thank all the esteemed panelists and the guest of honors and guests who have been part of this event. Kindly encourage us and support us on day 2, which is tomorrow, starting at 9:30 a.m. And we've had a lot of issues that have not been, been talked about in these panels. And I think that openness and that course of correction is very much required. This is Avin, and I'm signing off on behalf of my team. I'd also like to congratulate my team on India Education Futures, creating digital knowledge economy. Thank you all. Please be there with us tomorrow as well. As we conclude today, we'll be starting at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow on second day of IEF 2021. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashuji. for
Thank
giving
you, sir.
us this kind of opportunities.
No, sir, I think all of your thoughts were amazing, and I actually look forward to connecting with you very, very soon, as soon as we end this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, we'd love to.
And you know,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.